"Get on your knees now," Officer Blake Harlan barked, driving his boot hard into the back of Maya Williams's knee. "Put your hands up." Then he pressed the tip of his baton against her forehead and shoved hard enough to force her balance backward. Maya dropped to her knees on the grass of the park after Harlan's brutal kick. The white bouquet slipped from her hand. She did not look at the officer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the brass plaque mounted on the back of the memorial bench, where her late father's name was engraved. Officer Harlan did not care about the plaque. He did not ask why she was there before sunrise with flowers in one hand and a brown paper bag in the other. His racial prejudice had already written the story for him before the first real question ever left his mouth. "Hands higher," Harlan ordered. Maya slowly raised both hands, forcing her breathing to stay controlled despite the sudden tightness in her chest. Cold moisture from the wet grass quickly seeped through her jeans, right beside the white petals of her ruined bouquet. "Officer," she said, keeping her voice steady, "I can explain why I'm here." Harlan stood over her. His patrol jacket bore the name Blake Harlan and the patch of the Red Hollow Police Department. His cruiser blocked the narrow service path behind them. The park was still dim under the early morning sky. The public entrance would not open for another hour. "People like you always can," he said. Maya did not answer right away. She looked again at the brass plaque. Caleb Williams. Firefighter. Father. Neighbor. Friend. She had come to Liberty Pines State Park before sunrise for a rare, quiet moment before her day began. The brown paper bag held nothing but a blueberry muffin from a local bakery, and the flowers were simply for her father. But Harlan saw a young black woman in a dark jacket. He saw a brown paper bag. He saw a person, alone in a part of town where he believed she did not belong. "What's in the bag?" he asked. "A muffin." "Don't get smart. I'm answering your question. You entered a restricted area. I have permission to be here." "From who?" "The park office." "Name?" "Mrs. Coleman." "Visitor services." Harlan gave a thin smile. "Everybody knows somebody when they get caught." "I wasn't caught," Maya said. "I was visiting my father's memorial." Harlan glanced at the bench, then back at her. His expression did not change. "We've had thefts in this park. Cars opened, bags taken, property damaged. Then check my identification. Do not tell me how to do my job. I'm not reaching for anything. I'm telling you my ID is in my coat pocket." I said, "Hands up." Maya lifted her hands a little higher. The movement made the sleeve of her father's old brown jacket slide back from her wrist. The security watch beneath it gave a brief flash. Harlan noticed. His eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "A safety device," Maya said. "You recording me?" "No." "You tracking me?" "It's registered." "With who?" Maya hesitated. She had not told him who she was. She knew the moment she did, everything could become more dangerous. Men like Harlan did not always back down when corrected. Sometimes they doubled down to protect their pride. "With my security office," she said. Harlan stared at her, then laughed once. "Security office. Officer, you need to call this in. I need to do exactly what I'm doing." He stepped closer, took her wrist, and pulled the watch free. Maya stayed still. She knew Daniel Harper was somewhere behind them on the path. She had seen the older man moments earlier with his dog, standing frozen near the bend. Harlan dropped the watch into the wet grass. "Don't," Maya said. He pressed his boot down on it. The screen cracked beneath his weight. The light died. Maya's stomach tightened. That watch was not just a device. It was her connection to Rachel Boone and the state security team waiting beyond the service gate. It carried her location, her emergency status, and her last confirmed signal. Harlan leaned down toward her. "Now nobody's coming for you." Behind him, an older voice spoke from the path. "Officer, I'm recording this." Harlan turned sharply. Daniel Harper stood 20 yards away, holding a phone in one hand and a dog leash in the other. His golden retriever stood beside him, gray around the muzzle. Daniel wore a faded Detroit Tigers cap and a navy windbreaker. His hand trembled, but the phone stayed pointed at Harlan. "Turn that off," Harlan said. "No, sir. This is official police business. That's why I'm recording." Harlan stepped away from Maya. "You want to be cited for interfering?" Daniel swallowed. "I taught history for 39 years. I know the difference between interfering and witnessing. Maya turned her head slightly. Sir, please stay back. Daniel looked at her carefully. His face changed as recognition came to him. I know you, he said. I've seen you on television. Harlan snapped. Don't talk to her. Maya lowered her eyes. She could feel the situation tightening around her. Harlan had already forced her down. He had destroyed the watch. He had a witness. But he also had a badge, a cruiser, a radio, and the confidence of a man used to being believed. He reached for his shoulder mic. Dispatch, this is Harlan. I have a female trespasser at Liberty Pines. Possible theft. Refusing lawful commands. Maya looked up. That is false. Harlan ignored her. Daniel raised his voice. She didn't refuse. You made her get down. Harlan pointed toward him. One more word, and you're going in too. Daniel went quiet, but he did not lower the phone. Maya looked back at the bench. Her father had taught her that dignity was not something another person could hand to you. It was something you protected when no one else would. He had died when she was 18, after running into a burning building because people were trapped inside. He had believed service meant standing between danger and the vulnerable. Now his daughter knelt in front of his memorial while a police officer built a lie around her. Officer Harlan, Maya said, you are making this worse than it needs to be. No, he said. You did that when you came in here acting like rules don't apply to you. Maya's jaw tightened. She wanted to say her name. She wanted to tell him exactly who he had put on her knees, but something held her back. If he was willing to do this to a woman he thought had no power, then the truth was larger than her own safety. A low mist hung over the silent park, shrouding the broken watch where it lay near the crushed flowers. Then, the air beyond the tree line began to shift. At first, Harlan did not notice. Daniel did. His dog lifted its head. Leaves along the path began to tremble. The surface of the lake rippled in widening rings. Harlan turned toward the soundless movement of the trees, his face hardening. Maya did not smile. She did not move. She only looked at the crushed watch and understood what Harlan did not. Before the screen died, it had sent one final signal. The trees shook harder, and the mist above Liberty Pines began to break apart. Officer Blake Harlan took one step back from Maya, staring toward the lake as if the park itself had betrayed him. The movement in the treetops spread from the waterline to the memorial path. Loose leaves lifted from the grass and scattered across the old service road. Daniel Harper tightened his grip on Scout's leash and looked up, his phone still recording. What is that? Daniel asked, though no one answered him. Harlan turned toward Maya. What did you do? Maya stayed on her knees beside the bench, hands raised, her face calm but pale. I told you to call this in properly. I asked what you did. I didn't do anything. Harlan looked down at the broken watch half buried in wet grass. His confidence wavered for the first time. He had crushed it. He had seen the screen go dark. He had heard no alarm, no voice, no warning. But now the tops of the pines were bending, and the morning fog was being pushed apart by something large moving overhead. From beyond the lake, a black state helicopter descended into view. It came low over the trees and settled toward the open grass near the walking trail, its landing lights cutting through the gray morning. The emblem on the side was clear even through the mist. State Executive Security Division. Harlan's mouth opened slightly. He looked from the helicopter to Maya, then back to the shattered watch. Daniel lowered the phone for half a second, stunned. Then he lifted it again. As the helicopter touched down on the far side of the memorial lawn, flattening the grass beneath its powerful rotors, Maya kept her head down against the sudden gale pulling at her scarf and jacket. Beside her, the bouquet rolled once before catching against the leg of the bench. The door of the helicopter opened. Special Agent Rachel Boone stepped out first. She was tall, controlled, and dressed in a dark field coat with state security identification clipped at her chest. Two other members of the security team followed her, along with uniformed state police officers. None of them rushed blindly. They moved with purpose, spreading out across the lawn in a tight formation that made the scene smaller around Harlan with every step. Rachel's eyes went first to Maya. She saw the kneeling position, the raised hands, the broken watch, the flowers in the grass, and Harlan standing too close. Her voice carried across the park. "Officer Harlan, step away from Representative Williams." The words struck the scene harder than the wind. Daniel Harper froze. Harlan stared at Rachel as if she had spoken in another language. "Representative?" Rachel did not repeat herself. "Step away from her now." Harlan turned slowly toward Maya, the woman he had called a trespasser, the woman he had forced to her knees, the woman whose watch he had crushed under his boot. Her face had not changed, but everything around her had. "Maya Williams," Daniel whispered behind his phone. "Good Lord," Harlan swallowed. "This is my scene." She was detained for trespassing and possible theft. Rachel continued toward him. "You are a municipal officer, standing in a state park, detaining a state representative assigned executive protection for a scheduled legislative hearing. You will step back and place your hands where the officers can see them." "I didn't know who she was." "Looked up then." "You didn't ask." The sentence was quiet, but Harlan reacted as if the whole park had heard it. Rachel stopped 10 feet from him. "Officer Harlan, this is your final administrative instruction. Move away from Representative Williams." Harlan's face reddened. He looked toward his cruiser, then toward Daniel, then toward the state officers closing in from both sides. His authority had depended on isolation. Now every part of the scene had witnesses. "I followed procedure," he said. One of the state officers answered. "Then you can explain that after you comply." Harlan hesitated too long. The two state officers approached without raising weapons, without shouting, and without panic. While one officer secured his right wrist, the other smoothly guided his elbow and shoulder into a standard restraint. Harlan tried to pull back out of sheer pride, but the officers easily countered his momentum, turning him away from Maya and forcing him down onto the grass. "Take your hands off me," Harlan snapped. "You're being secured pending review of the detention," one officer said. "I'm a police officer." "Then you know how this works." Harlan's face tightened. A few minutes earlier, he had used procedure as a wall. Now it had become a door closing behind him. Rachel moved to Maya and knelt beside her. For the first time that morning, Maya allowed herself to breathe fully. "Ma'am," Rachel said, her voice lower now. "Are you injured?" "No." "Can you stand?" "Yes." Rachel looked at the cuffs. "I'm taking these off." Maya turned her head slightly. "Leave them on." Rachel paused. "Representative Williams?" "Leave them on." Rachel studied her steady, unyielding gaze. Wet grass clung to Maya's jeans and her father's damp jacket, while her wrists already showed deep pressure marks, stark physical evidence of the detention. Rachel understood before Maya explained. Maya looked toward Harlan, now held by the state officers. "He destroyed the watch because he thought it would make me disappear." Rachel followed her gaze to the broken device. One of the security agents had already retrieved it from the grass and placed it in an evidence pouch. Daniel stepped closer, careful not to cross the line of officers. "I have video," he said, "from before the helicopter. I got him making her kneel. I got the watch." Rachel looked at him. "Sir, I need your name." "Daniel Harper, retired teacher. I live off Maple Church Road." "You kept recording?" "Yes, ma'am." Maya looked at Daniel. "Thank you." If you feel for Maya, a woman forced to kneel before injustice, yet still holding on to her dignity, please like this video and comment where you are watching from, your city or your state, because there may be people near you watching this story with you right now. He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I should have started sooner." That simple regret stayed in the air. Rachel rose and turned to her team. "Secure the cruiser. Preserve his radio traffic. Nobody touches the onboard system, except state digital evidence." Harlan, still controlled on the grass, lifted his head. "You can't search my vehicle without authorization." Rachel looked at him. "Your cruiser is part of an active detention involving a protected state official. The Attorney General's office will be notified within the minute." Maya stood slowly with Rachel's help. She kept her hands behind her because of the cuffs, but she did not bend her shoulders forward. The posture was uncomfortable, yet she held herself straight. Her eyes moved to the bench. The flowers lay scattered near the broken muffin that had tumbled from its bag, while heavy mist streaked the brass plaque on the bench. Rachel noticed where Maya was looking. We can come back for the flowers. Maya shook her head. No. Leave everything exactly where it is. Rachel did not question her. One of the state officers opened Harlan's cruiser and read from the computer screen. Agent Boone, there's an active incident code here. P-17. Rachel turned sharply. Say that again. P-17. No state cross-reference. Harlan's expression changed. Maya saw it. So did Rachel. Daniel stepped forward again. I've heard that before. Rachel looked at him. Where? Here, Daniel said. A few weeks ago, a young Hispanic man was stopped near the boat path. He looked like he'd just come off a landscaping shift. One of the officers used that same code over the radio. Harlan said, Old man doesn't know what he heard. Daniel's voice hardened. I know exactly what I heard. The officer at the cruiser leaned closer to the screen. There's a message coming through. Rachel moved to the open door and read the line herself. Clear P-17 report. Chief wants it clean before noon. For the first time since the helicopter landed, no one spoke. Maya looked at Harlan. He would not meet her eyes. Rachel's face became still. Not calm. Still. The kind of stillness that came before action. Maya said, Get me Attorney General Reed. Rachel turned to one of her agents. Secure line. Now. The agent stepped away with a state communications device. Harlan remained on the grass, suddenly quiet. Maya stood beside her father's bench with the cuffs still on her wrists, the pressure marks beginning to show, the mud on her knees drying in the morning air. A few minutes earlier, this had been one officer, one woman, one witness, and one broken watch. Now it was something larger. Rachel returned with the secure device. Attorney General Reed is connecting. Maya looked once more at the message on the cruiser screen. Then she spoke with the controlled voice of someone who understood that a private humiliation had just opened the door to a public crime. Tell him to preserve every server in Red Hollow. Now. Attorney General Marcus Reed answered on the second ring. His voice came through the secure device rough with morning urgency. Rachel, tell me, she's safe. Maya stepped closer before Rachel could respond. Marcus, it's me. There was a brief pause. In that silence, Maya could hear the helicopter settling behind her, the low movement of officers around Harlan's cruiser, and Daniel Harper quietly telling Scout to stay beside him. Maya, Reed said, his voice changing. Are you all right? I'm standing. That is not what I asked. No visible injuries. I'm still in cuffs. I asked them to leave them on. Another pause. This one was heavier. Reed knew her well enough not to argue immediately. He had been in enough courtrooms to understand when a person was preserving evidence, not just for a legal case, but for the conscience of a state. What happened? Maya looked at the broken watch, then at the message on Harlan's cruiser screen. A Red Hollow officer detained me at my father's memorial. He claimed trespassing and possible theft. He destroyed my security watch. A witness has video. His cruiser shows an internal code, P-17. A message just came in telling him to clear the report because the chief wants it clean before noon. Reed's voice hardened. Who is the chief? Warren Pike, Rachel added. We need digital preservation immediately. Local systems may already be compromised. Reed did not waste a second. I'm issuing a preservation directive through my office right now. I'll contact state police, major crimes, and the digital evidence unit. Rachel, nobody from Red Hollow touches that cruiser, that radio, or that terminal. Already secured, Rachel said. Maya, Reed continued. You understand what this means. I do. This is no longer about one officer. Maya looked at Harlan. He was seated on the grass now, controlled by two state officers, his face tight and pale. He had stopped protesting. Silence, for him, was not remorse. It was calculation. No, Maya said. It never was. Reed exhaled. I'll call Captain Elise Monroe. She's closest to Red Hollow headquarters. If Pike tries to destroy records, we need to be inside that building before he finishes. Then move fast, Maya said. I am. The line shifted as Reed began giving orders to someone on his end. His voice moved away from the receiver, sharp and formal. He was no longer speaking as a friend. He was speaking as the chief legal officer of the state. Rachel took the device back and turned to her team. Agent Mills, photograph the watch where it was recovered, the flowers, the bench, the cruiser position, and the path. Officer Grant, copy the cruiser screen before that message disappears. Mr. Harper, please stay with us. Your video is now evidence. Daniel nodded. I'll stay. Maya looked at him. You don't have to stand in the middle of this. He gave her a tired smile. Representative Williams, I'm 72 years old. I've spent most of my life telling young people that citizenship is not a spectator sport. I suppose I'd better mean it. For the first time that morning, Maya almost smiled. Harlan heard the title again and flinched. You never identified yourself. Maya turned toward him. I told you I had identification. You didn't say you were a representative. You didn't ask who I was. You decided what I was. His mouth opened, then closed. Rachel stepped between them before Harlan could rebuild his defense. Officer Harlan, you will not address Representative Williams unless instructed. Harlan looked at Rachel with resentment, but the fight had gone out of his voice. I want my union rep. You'll have access through proper channels, Rachel said. For now, you are being secured pending state review of your detention and your communication records. Maya listened without satisfaction. She had no interest in watching Harlan suffer embarrassment for its own sake. What mattered was the pattern. P-17. The message. The young Hispanic man Daniel had remembered. The phrase Harlan had used. Places where they don't belong. That phrase did not belong to one man. It belonged to a culture. Across the county, Red Hollow Police Chief Warren Pike was still in his office when the first call came from dispatch. He was 61, broad through the shoulders, with silver hair combed neatly back and a habit of keeping his desk too clean. He believed a clean desk signaled discipline. He also believed a small town survived by controlling who moved through it. The dispatcher's voice shook. Chief, it's Harlan. Pike rubbed his eyes and glanced toward the small television mounted in the corner of his office. The morning news was muted. A weather map showed rain, moving east. What did Blake do now? He detained someone at Liberty Pines. Then process it. Chief, state security is there. Pike sat upright. The dispatcher lowered her voice. They came by helicopter. Pike did not speak. She's Representative Maya Williams. The name landed in the office like a legal summons. Pike stood so quickly his chair rolled back into the wall. Maya Williams. The young one. The reform bill. The hearing that morning. The woman who had spent months asking questions about municipal stop data, complaint logs, and body camera retention policies. What did Harlan report? Pike asked. Trespassing. Possible theft. Refusing commands. Was there video? I don't know. Pike's gaze moved to the closed door of his office. Beyond it, the station was just beginning its day. Coffee in paper cups. Night shift officers finishing reports. A janitor pushing a cart down the hall. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary faces. And underneath all of it, 18 months of records that were never supposed to be read by anyone outside Red Hollow. Lock down the system, Pike said. Chief, do it now. No outside access. No file transfers. No automated sync. There's already a state inquiry hitting dispatch. Pike's throat tightened. Then stall them. He hung up and left his office without his jacket. The server room was at the back of the building, past the records desk and the break room where someone had left a box of grocery store donuts open beside the coffee maker. Officer Lena Ortiz looked up from a report as Pike passed. Chief, everything okay? System maintenance, he said. Stay off the terminals. She frowned. All of them? All of them. Pike entered the server room and closed the door behind him. The air was colder there. Rows of black equipment cabinets lined the wall. Small status lights blinked across the racks. A monitor sat on a narrow metal desk beside a keyboard and an access card reader. He typed his password wrong the first time. His hands were damp. On the second try, the system opened. He moved through the folders quickly. Patrol logs, camera archives, internal messages, code tables, supplemental reports. Then he opened the directory that did not appear on standard officer terminals. Parkline Sweep. The name had been his idea. Clean. Administrative. Boring enough to be ignored. Inside were maps of Liberty Pines, the Marina Road, the lakefront neighborhoods, and the private lanes near the country club. There were spreadsheets of license plates, driver descriptions, locations, times, and officer notes. The language was careful in some places and careless in others. Too many entries mentioned race. Too many used phrases that could not survive daylight. Too many reports had been corrected after the fact. Pike stared at the folders. For years, he had told himself this was order, not hate. Order. Red Hollow was a quiet town, and quiet towns stayed quiet because men like him knew where trouble came from. That was what he told city council members. That was what he told donors at pancake breakfasts. That was what he told himself when complaint letters arrived from people with names he did not recognize and addresses outside his tax base. Now, one of those people was Maya Williams. He opened the administrative tools and selected Emergency Purge Protocol. A warning filled the screen. The action would overwrite selected archives, clear access trails, and rebuild the visible index. It required chief-level authorization. Pike inserted his access card. The system asked for confirmation. He hesitated only once. Then he confirmed. A progress bar appeared. At Liberty Pines, Rachel's phone vibrated. She read the message from Attorney General Reed and turned to Maya. Captain Monroe is en route to Red Hollow headquarters. Digital evidence team is with her. Reed says Pike may already be moving. Maya looked toward the road beyond the trees. The morning was no longer quiet. It had split open. Then we don't have minutes to waste, she said. Rachel studied her. We should get you to the State House. The hearing starts at 9. Maya looked down at her muddy knees, then at the cuffs still holding her hands behind her. I'm going, she said, but not clean, not comfortable, and not without the truth from that building. Daniel Harper lowered his phone at last. What happens if they erase it? Maya turned toward him. Then they erase more than files, she said. They erase every person who tried to complain and was told there was no proof. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood that kind of erasure. Every history teacher did. Rachel gestured to the helicopter crew, and then to the waiting state SUV that had just arrived near the service gate. We move in 2 tracks. Evidence team to Red Hollow. You to the State House. Maya looked once more at her father's bench. The flowers were still on the ground. The broken muffin lay beside the paper bag. The brass plaque was wet with mist. Leave it as it is, she said. Rachel nodded. For the record. No, Maya said. For the truth. Behind them. Harlan heard the words and looked away. Rachel Boone gave 2 instructions before Maya left Liberty Pines. The first was to the state evidence officer. Everything stays exactly where it is until photographed and logged. The flowers, the paper bag, the broken device, the bench, the ground impressions, the cruiser angle. Nothing gets moved without a record. The second was to Maya. Ma'am, I need you in the SUV. The helicopter draws too much attention now, and the press will already be tracking air movement. Maya looked toward the black helicopter resting on the grass. Its presence had saved her from isolation, but it had also announced that something serious had happened. By the time the story reached the first newsroom, it would already be twisted into whatever shape the loudest person gave it. Where's Harlan? Maya asked. Rachel glanced toward the service path. Being transported separately by state police. No Red Hollow personnel will handle him. Good. You still want the cuffs left on? Maya held Rachel's eyes. Yes. Rachel's expression did not soften, but her voice did. They've already served their purpose at the scene. No, Maya said. They served his purpose at the scene. They serve mine at the hearing. Rachel said nothing for a moment. She was not a political advisor. She did not think in speeches or camera angles, but she understood evidence. She understood command presence. She understood that some facts lost power once they were cleaned up for public comfort. All right, Rachel said, but I'm staying close. You always do. Maya started toward the SUV with her hands still secured behind her. The walk was short, but every step forced her to feel the imbalance of her posture. She kept her shoulders straight. Daniel Harper watched from beside the path, his phone now sealed in an evidence sleeve, after a state officer copied the original video. "Representative Williams," he called. Maya stopped. Daniel removed his tiger's cap and held it against his chest. "I don't know what they're going to say about you today, but I know what I saw." Maya looked at the older man's face, at the worry in his eyes, at the dignity in the way he stood even with the dog leash wrapped around one hand. "That may matter more than anything I say." He shook his head. "No, ma'am. What you say will matter. What I saw will keep them from pretending you said it for nothing." Maya gave him a small nod. "Come to the State House if you can. I'll be there," Daniel said. "Scout may have to sit this one out." For the first time since Harlan arrived, Maya allowed a brief breath that almost became a laugh. Then Rachel guided her into the rear seat of the SUV. Inside, the vehicle smelled of leather, coffee, and rain-damp fabric. A state security driver pulled onto the service road while another SUV followed behind. Rachel sat beside Maya, one hand on a secure tablet, the other holding a phone already connected to Evelyn Price. Evelyn's voice filled the cabin. "Maya, tell me the truth. How bad is it?" "I'm all right." That is the answer people give when they are absolutely not all right. "I can stand. I can speak." Maya. The single word carried 20 years of political instinct and something close to maternal fear. Evelyn Price had seen candidates collapse in scandals over things they did, and over things done to them. She knew the public could be cruelest when a victim refused to look weak enough to be pitied. Maya leaned her head back against the seat. "He made me kneel at my father's bench. He broke the watch. He filed a false report before he knew who I was." Evelyn went quiet. Rachel looked up from the tablet but did not interrupt. When Evelyn spoke again, her voice had changed. "Do you want the hearing postponed?" "No." "Maya, think carefully. The hearing was already contentious before this. Half that room thinks your accountability bill is an attack on every small-town department in the state. If you walk in like this, they'll say you staged it. They'll say that anyway. They'll say you provoked him. They're already preparing that sentence. They'll say you're too young to understand restraint." Maya looked out the tinted window. Liberty pines slipped past in pieces. Damp fence posts. Red leaves gathered near the curb. The old park sign with faded gold lettering. "Then I'll show them restraint." Evelyn exhaled. "You still have the cuffs on, don't you?" "Yes." "Maya, I'm not taking them off before the hearing." Rachel spoke then. "Evelyn, there are visible pressure marks on her wrists. No injury requiring emergency care, but they will be noticeable. That's exactly why the medical team should look at her before she's on camera." Maya shook her head. "If I walk into that chamber cleaned up, they'll turn what happened into a disagreement, a misunderstanding, a bad morning between a young politician and a nervous officer." Evelyn's voice dropped. "And if you walk in with cuffs, they'll call it theater." "Let them," Maya said. "The footage will decide whether it was theater." Rachel turned the tablet toward Maya. "Captain Monroe is 3 minutes from Red Hollow headquarters. Reed's preservation directive has been transmitted. Local dispatch is not acknowledging. They're stalling," Evelyn said. "Yes," Rachel replied. "And Chief Pike has administrative control of their internal archive." Maya stared at the screen. A map showed 2 moving state police units approaching Red Hollow. Another marker showed the Red Hollow Police Department building near the municipal courthouse. "How long before data can be destroyed?" Maya asked. Rachel's mouth tightened. "If Pike has already started an overwrite protocol, minutes, maybe less," Maya said. "Call Monroe directly." Rachel tapped the screen. After a brief connection delay, Captain Elise Monroe's voice came through. "Boone, I'm on approach. Front entrance is closed. Side lot has 2 local units parked across the access lane. Do not wait for voluntary entry," Rachel said. "Attorney General's directive is active." "I know the law," Monroe replied. Her voice was calm, older, firm. "I also know Warren Pike. He'll smile at a judge while his hand is on the shredder." Maya leaned toward the speaker. "Captain Monroe, this is Maya Williams." A pause. "Representative, are you safe? I'm moving to the State House, but if those files vanish, every person Red Hollow targeted vanishes with them." I understand. No, Maya said. I need you to understand this exactly. If there is a legal path to preserve that server, take it now. Not in 10 minutes. Not after a polite conversation. Now. Monroe did not sound offended. She sounded ready. Understood. The line ended. The SUV turned onto the county road leading out of the park. Morning traffic had begun. Pickup trucks, school buses for adult vocational programs, commuters with coffee cups in their consoles, retirees walking toward diners where the same booths held the same people every day. It looked like an ordinary American morning, the kind that taught people to trust familiar roads and uniforms and routines. Maya wondered how many people had been stopped on mornings just like this and told themselves if they stayed calm, the truth would be enough. Her phone was in Rachel's custody now, recovered from her coat after Harlan's detention. Rachel held it up. Your mother has called 6 times. Maya closed her eyes. Evelyn said, I can call her. No. Put her through. Rachel connected the call and held the phone near Maya. Her mother answered. Before the first ring finished, Maya Denise Williams. Maya's throat tightened at the full name. Hi, Mama. Do not. Hi, Mama me. I am watching helicopters over Liberty Pines on Channel 7. Where are you? In the car. Are you hurt? No. Do not give me a politician's answer. Maya looked down at the cuffs. I'm shaken. I'm angry. But I'm not hurt. Her mother was quiet for a second. Were you at your father's bench? Yes. A long breath came through the line. Lord have mercy. I'm sorry you had to see it on the news. I don't care about the news. I care about my child. I know. Her mother's voice softened, but only a little. Your father used to say you had a spine made of church pew oak. That does not mean you have to carry every burden in public. Maya looked out the window as the first edge of sunlight broke through the clouds. This one has to be public. Because of who you are? No, Maya said. Because of who he thought I was. Her mother did not answer right away. When she did, her voice carried both fear and pride. Then stand straight, baby. Maya swallowed. I will. And when this is over, you come home for dinner. I don't care how many cameras are outside. A small, steady warmth moved through Maya's chest. Yes, ma'am. The call ended. For a few seconds, no one in the SUV spoke. Then, Rachel's tablet lit up with a new alert. She read it, and her face changed. Evelyn heard the shift before anyone explained. What is it? Rachel looked at Maya. Red Hollow. Just denied state access to the building. Monroe is initiating emergency entry. Maya sat forward. On the tablet, the marker for Captain Monroe's unit stopped outside the police department. The quiet park was behind them now. The hearing was ahead, and somewhere in between, in a locked room full of servers, the truth was running out of time. Captain Elise Monroe stood outside the rear entrance of the Red Hollow Police Department, with one hand raised, waiting for her entry team to take position. The building was low, square, and plain, built from beige concrete in the late 70s, and never improved beyond new glass doors and a flagpole out front. A row of damp shrubs lined the side wall. Beyond the parking lot sat the municipal courthouse, a barber shop, a closed hardware store, and a diner where retirees were already gathering for eggs, toast, and coffee. It looked like the kind of town where nothing important happened before breakfast. Monroe knew better. A young officer from Red Hollow stood inside the glass door, refusing to open it. He held the phone to his ear and kept glancing over his shoulder. Monroe pressed her badge against the glass. This is Captain Elise Monroe, State Police Major Crimes. We have an emergency preservation directive from the Attorney General's office. Open the door. The officer shook his head. Chief says no one enters without a warrant. Monroe did not raise her voice. The directive is active. The building is under preservation hold. If your chief ordered you to block access to evidence, you should think very carefully about whether you want your name attached to that decision. The officer looked down the hall again. Ma'am, I was told to wait. Monroe turned to the state technician beside her. Access? The technician checked the tablet. No response from their system. They've disabled remote entry. Monroe looked once at the closed door, then at the team behind her. Emergency entry. Minimum damage. Document everything. 2 state officers moved to the side service door with a hydraulic entry tool. A body camera specialist stepped forward and announced the time, location, purpose of entry, and legal authority for the recording. Monroe wanted every second preserved. In a case about erased evidence, procedure had to be clean enough to survive every courtroom in the state. Inside the server room, Chief Warren Pike watched the deletion progress bar move forward. His office shirt was damp at the collar. He had locked the server room door, then locked the inner cage that protected the data cabinets. On the monitor, the emergency purge protocol continued to run. It was designed for disaster recovery, not cover-up. But Pike had learned years ago that a tool did not care why a man used it. He checked the hallway camera. State officers were at the rear door. "Come on," he muttered. The progress bar advanced. Pike opened another window and selected the dispatch audio archive. Parkline Sweep had not lived in one place. It had lived in dispatch notes, patrol summaries, officer messages, body camera tags, license plate logs, and informal code references. The purge was supposed to clean all of it, but the system was slower than he expected. He had spent years telling officers to keep things vague. Suspicious presence, welfare check, park security contact, vehicle verification, public safety inquiry, words that sounded harmless in monthly reports, words that hid the pattern from anyone who did not know where to look. Now Maya Williams knew where to look. At the rear of the building, the service door gave way under controlled pressure. Monroe's team entered the hallway and moved past the break room. A pot of coffee sat half full on the warmer. Someone had left a box of powdered donuts open beside a stack of paper plates. 3 red hollow employees stood frozen near the records counter. Monroe addressed them without slowing. "Step away from all terminals. Hands visible. Do not delete, move, unplug, or alter any equipment." A records clerk said, "Captain, we don't know what's going on." Then, "The safest thing you can do is nothing." A state officer guided the staff away from the desks. No one was thrown down. No one was dragged. The authority was in the order, the badges, the cameras, and the fact that every local employee understood the state had arrived for more than a misunderstanding. Monroe reached the locked hallway leading to the server room. Status. The technician lifted his tablet. Still no network handshake. "If they're running a local overwrite, we can't stop it remotely." "How long?" "I don't know until I see the console." "Open it." The hallway door required a code. The first entry failed. The technician tried the emergency override from the preservation directive. It failed too. "They changed access privileges," he said. Monroe looked at the reinforced door. "Bypass it." While the team worked, Pike watched them on the camera feed. He could see Monroe now, standing outside the server hallway, composed and relentless. He knew her by reputation. She was not dramatic. She did not bluff. She finished things. The deletion bar was nearly complete. Pike's phone buzzed on the metal desk. The caller ID showed Carl Donovan from the police union. Pike answered. "Tell me you have this contained," Donovan said. "I'm handling it. You detained Maya Williams before her own hearing on police oversight. There are helicopters on local news. There's already chatter that her security team pulled a message from Harlan's cruiser." Pike stared at the screen, then stopped the chatter. "That's what I'm doing. I have a clip from Harlan's body cam. She looks confrontational in it. Use it. It's missing context. Then, give it context." Donovan went quiet for half a second. "You're sure?" Pike's eyes stayed on the progress bar. "By noon, there won't be anything left for them to compare it to." The hallway door outside the server room opened. Pike ended the call. Monroe's team entered the final corridor and reached the server room door. The technician scanned it and looked back. "He's inside." "Pike?" Monroe asked. "Likely. Internal camera shows one person at the console. Can we cut the door?" "Not fast enough." Monroe looked toward the electrical plans on the tablet. "Main power? Basement utility room. If we cut the building feed, the servers should drop before the purge finishes. Backup batteries may carry some equipment, but not the full array. If we isolate the rack circuit." "Do it." The technician ran for the stairwell with 2 state officers behind him. Inside, Pike saw the progress bar reach its final stretch. He placed both hands on the desk and leaned close, as if his own breath could push the system faster. In the SUV, Rachel Boone's tablet showed Monroe's live status updates as short lines of text. Emergency entry complete. Local staff secured. Server room locked. Suspect inside. Purge likely active. Cutting power. Maya read each line without speaking. Evelyn was still on the call. Maya, what are they seeing? They're at the server room, Maya said. Pike is inside. Evelyn cursed softly, then caught herself. Sorry, don't be, Maya said. My mother would have said worse. Rachel looked at the next update and went still. At Red Hollow, the technician reached the basement utility room and opened the main panel under state supervision. He identified the circuits feeding the server room, confirmed the emergency authorization on camera, and pulled the cutoff in sequence. The police department went dark. Lights died across the hallway. Computer monitors went black at the records desk. The coffee machine in the break room stopped heating. In the server room, the monitor in front of Pike went blank before the purge completed. For 1 second, he stood in complete darkness. Then the emergency lights came on. They painted the server room in a flat red glow. Pike's reflection stared back at him from the dead monitor. His hand was still on the mouse. The server room door opened from the outside, after the manual release disengaged. Monroe stepped in with a flashlight and a recording officer behind her. Chief Warren Pike, she said. Step away from the console. Pike turned slowly. His voice came out thin. You had no right to cut power to my building. Monroe looked past him at the dark equipment racks. This building is not yours. The evidence inside it is not yours. And the people in those files were never yours to erase. Pike tried to straighten his shoulders. I was protecting my department. You were protecting yourself. He looked at the monitor, then at her. For the first time, he seemed old. Monroe gave the next order calmly. Secure him. Then bring in digital forensics. I want every drive imaged, every access log preserved, every backup located, and every terminal photographed before anyone touches a keyboard. A state officer guided Pike away from the desk and placed him in restraints without force. Pike did not resist. He kept staring at the blank screen, as though he could still will it to finish what he had started. In the SUV, Rachel received the update. Power cut successful. Purge interrupted. Pike secured. Servers intact pending forensic imaging. Maya closed her eyes. She did not smile. Relief was too small a word for what moved through her. Somewhere inside those servers were names, dates, stops, lies, complaints, and quiet humiliations that had almost disappeared. People who had been told there was no proof might finally have proof. Rachel lowered the tablet. They got it. Evelyn let out a breath over the phone. Thank God. Maya opened her eyes as the State House dome appeared ahead through the windshield. Not yet, she said. Now they're going to try to make the truth look like a lie. The State House came into view just as Evelyn Price's phone began lighting up with messages from every direction. She was not in the SUV with Maya. She was already inside the Capitol complex, standing in a side office near the hearing chamber, surrounded by staffers who looked too young to understand how fast a morning could turn into a career-ending storm. 3 televisions were mounted on the wall. Each one carried a different news channel. On one screen, the state helicopter at Liberty Pines replayed from a traffic camera angle. On another, a political panel argued without facts. On the third, Carl Donovan appeared in a navy suit, his union pin fixed neatly to his lapel. Evelyn raised one hand, and the room went quiet. Donovan leaned toward the camera with the solemn face of a man selling a lie as public concern. What we know at this point, he said, is that Representative Williams was in a restricted area before opening hours. Officer Harlan was responding to reports of theft and vandalism. We have video showing the representative becoming verbally aggressive and refusing to cooperate with a lawful inquiry. The screen changed. A short clip played. It showed Maya on her knees, looking up at Harlan and saying, "You are making this worse than it needs to be." Then the clip jumped forward. Maya's voice came again, firmer. "That is false." The clip ended before Harlan's report could be heard. It did not show him ordering her down. It did not show the watch being destroyed. It did not show Daniel Harper standing 20 yards away with his phone raised. It did not show the flowers, the memorial bench, or the fact that Maya had never been asked to identify herself properly. The anchor returned to Donovan. So, your position is that Officer Harlan followed procedure? Our position, Donovan said, is that no elected official, no matter how powerful or ambitious, gets to intimidate an officer doing his job. The public should be very careful before accepting a political narrative designed to attack law enforcement. Evelyn turned the volume down. A young staffer named Nora stared at the screen. They cut it. Evelyn's face was still. Of course they cut it. A lie is easier to carry when it travels light. Her phone rang. Rachel Boone. Evelyn answered immediately. You've seen it? Rachel's voice came through from the SUV. Yes. Where is Maya? 2 minutes out. Does she know? She saw enough. Evelyn closed her eyes for 1 second. Tell her the hall is bad. Half the press is repeating Donovan's framing. Some members are asking whether the hearing should be postponed. It won't be. I know. That's why I'm telling you how ugly it is before she walks in. In the SUV, Rachel held the phone between herself and Maya. The city streets near the State House were already lined with news vans and police barricades. Pedestrians had stopped on corners, phones raised. Some held signs from the planned hearing. Others had clearly made new ones in the last hour. One read, "Back the badge." Another read, "Let the full tape speak." Maya watched them pass through the tinted glass. Evelyn's voice came through the phone. Maya, listen to me. Donovan's clip is everywhere. He made you look angry. He made Harlan look patient. They are saying you refuse to cooperate. Maya looked down at her hands behind her. The metal cuffs held her wrists close, not cutting, not injuring, but leaving firm pressure marks where they had rested for too long. Her knees were still stained from the park grass. Her father's jacket carried the damp smell of morning. Did Daniel's full video arrive? Maya asked. Yes. State digital evidence has it. Reed's office has it. We have a verified copy. And the body cam? Monroe's team interrupted the purge. They're imaging the drives now. Reed says they already found a local buffer tied to Harlan's unit. Maya nodded. Then we let them finish lying. Evelyn's tone sharpened. Maya, do not underestimate what is happening. People your age think the truth wins because it is true. People my age know the truth has to survive the first punch. Maya turned from the window. Then, help it survive. That's what I'm doing. The SUV slowed at the security entrance. Outside, reporters surged toward the barricade. Rachel stepped out first, then another state security officer. They did not push anyone. They simply formed a clear path with their bodies and their authority. The driver opened Maya's door. For a moment, the noise hit her all at once. Representative Williams, did you refuse orders? Why were you in the park before opening? Did you identify yourself? Are you using this to push your police bill? Do you have a comment on the union video? Maya stepped out. The shouting changed. It did not stop, but it shifted. Cameras moved lower, then higher, searching for what the audience could see. Her hands were still behind her. The cuffs were visible. So were the mud marks on her jeans. Her jacket was plain, old, and damp at the cuffs. She looked nothing like the polished young lawmaker whose campaign posters had filled bus stops across Southgate. A reporter near the front lowered his voice without meaning to. She's still cuffed. Rachel moved close to Maya's left side. No questions. Maya walked forward. Some people booed from behind the barricade. Others went silent. An older black woman in a church hat stood near the entrance, with both hands clasped around a small leather Bible. Maya did not know her. The woman did not speak. She only nodded once, slowly, as if telling Maya to keep going. That nod steadied her more than applause could have. Inside the State House, the marble hallway was crowded with aides, lobbyists, reporters, and legislators who had stepped out of offices to witness her arrival. The building smelled of floor polish, coffee, wool coats, and old paper. Portraits of former governors lined the walls, nearly all of them older white men painted in dark suits, watching the living with permanent approval. Maya walked beneath them with cuffs still on her wrists. Evelyn met her halfway down the corridor. For once, the older woman did not start with strategy. She stepped close and looked Maya over with the blunt concern of someone who had known her before the headlines. Are you sure? Maya answered softly. No. Evelyn's eyes tightened. Maya continued. But I'm ready. Evelyn nodded. That's better than sure. Rachel handed Evelyn a tablet. Full Harper video is cued. Donovan clip first, then the full video, then recovered body cam if Reed clears it in time. Parkline files are coming in batches from Monroe. Reed? On his way from the Attorney General's office. He'll enter from the East Hall. Evelyn turned to Maya. Some members want to delay. Senator Claiborne is leading it. Maya knew the name. Harold Claiborne, 68, former prosecutor, polished, respected, and deeply invested in the idea that small-town police departments were the backbone of American order. He had opposed her bill for months, not with insults, but with phrases that sounded reasonable. Local control, procedural fairness, respect for officers, unintended consequences. He saw the edited clip? Maya asked. He quoted it to reporters 10 minutes ago. Good. Evelyn blinked. Good? He committed himself before seeing the whole truth. Evelyn almost smiled. Your father would have called that stepping into your own rake. My father would have used plainer language. They moved toward the side chamber. Staffers parted for them. Some looked ashamed. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid to be seen choosing a side. Near the committee entrance, Daniel Harper waited in a chair, his tiger's cap resting on his knee. Scout was not with him. He stood when Maya approached. Ma'am, he said. Mr. Harper. I gave them the phone. They made a copy and gave it back. I didn't edit anything. I wouldn't know how even if I wanted to. I know. He looked at the cuffs and swallowed. I'm sorry. Maya shook her head. You didn't do this. No, but I'm old enough to know we all inherit the things we didn't stop. Maya held his gaze. Then help me stop this one. Daniel nodded. Yes, ma'am. A staffer opened the side door. The hearing chamber was full. Voices spilled out, tense and layered. At the far end, behind the raised dais, Senator Claiborne stood with several members around him, papers in hand. He looked toward Maya and then quickly away. Evelyn leaned in close. Last chance to remove the cuffs before you enter. Rachel stood ready, waiting for Maya's decision. Maya looked at the open door, then down the hall where reporters were still gathering, then at the tablet holding the full truth of what happened in the park. If I walk in clean, she said, they'll say the dirt was never there. Evelyn took a breath and stepped aside. Maya entered the chamber with the cuffs still on. The hearing chamber did not fall silent at once. It quieted in layers. First, the staffers stopped whispering. Then the reporters in the back row lowered their phones. Then the legislators seated along the long, curved dais looked up from their folders and saw what the cameras had already found. Maya Williams, standing at the center aisle in her father's old brown jacket, her jeans marked with mud at the knees, her hands still secured behind her back. The room had expected anger. It had expected a statement. It had expected the young representative to arrive surrounded by advisors, cleaned up, rehearsed, ready to accuse. It had not expected the cuffs. Senator Harold Claiborne stood near the center of the dais with his reading glasses in one hand and a typed statement in the other. A few minutes earlier, he had been telling members that the hearing could not proceed under emotionally compromised circumstances. Now, his eyes moved from Maya's face to her wrists, then to the mud on her knees. His mouth closed slowly. Maya walked forward without looking left or right. The hearing room was old, with dark wood paneling and brass lamps on the tables. Framed photographs of past legislative sessions lined the walls. The seats were filled beyond capacity. Older citizens in church clothes sat beside young legal aides. Retired officers sat beside civil rights organizers. Local reporters stood shoulder to shoulder in the back. Everyone had come to watch a fight over police accountability. None of them understood yet that the fight had already begun in a park before sunrise. Rachel Boone stayed 2 steps behind Maya. Evelyn Price moved to the side table where staff had placed the evidence tablet. Daniel Harper sat near the aisle, cap folded in his hands, his face set with the discomfort of a man who had never wanted attention but would not abandon truth to avoid it. The committee chair, Representative Alan Whitcomb, cleared his throat. He was 70 years old, with white hair, a careful voice, and a reputation for treating procedure like scripture. Representative Williams, he said, before we proceed, would you prefer a recess? No, Mr. Chairman. His eyes flicked again to the cuffs. Would you like those removed? Rachel stepped forward half a pace. Ready. Maya shook her head. Not yet. A murmur passed through the chamber. Whitcomb looked uneasy. Representative, this committee does not require you to appear in that condition. I know, Maya said. That is why I chose to. Senator Claiborne set his papers on the dais. Mr. Chairman, with respect, I must object to this display before we establish what actually occurred. There is already public footage suggesting Representative Williams was confrontational with Officer Harlan. I believe we should suspend this hearing until an independent review can determine the facts. Maya turned toward him. Senator, did you see the full footage? Claiborne hesitated. I saw enough to be concerned. No, Maya said. You saw enough to be useful to the people who cut it. The room shifted again. Not loud, not disorderly, just a collective adjustment, as if everyone had leaned slightly closer. Claiborne's face tightened. I have spent 40 years respecting law enforcement in this state. So have many of the people Red Hollow stopped, Maya replied. Respect did not protect them. Whitcomb raised a hand. We will maintain order. Maya looked back to the chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am prepared to testify. But before I do, I ask that the committee allow the edited video circulating this morning to be entered into the record first. Evelyn looked at her sharply. That had been the plan, but hearing it spoken still carried risk. Letting the lie speak first meant giving it the floor. Whitcomb frowned. You want to enter the union's video? Yes. Claiborne leaned forward. That seems appropriate. Maya looked at him. It is appropriate. A lie should be seen clearly before the truth corrects it. The chairman nodded to the clerk. Enter the publicly circulated clip into the preliminary record. The large screen at the front of the chamber came alive. Carl Donovan's television segment appeared. He sat under studio lights, calm, polished, certain. His words filled the chamber. Restricted area, lawful inquiry, verbally aggressive, refused to cooperate. Then the short clip played. Maya saw herself from a harsh angle, already on her knees, saying, "You are making this worse than it needs to be." The clip jumped. Her voice came again. "That is false." Then it ended. For a moment, the room held the version of her Donovan wanted them to hold. A difficult young woman, a political figure caught in a restricted area, a confrontation with a local officer doing his job. It was not enough to prove anything, but it was enough to stain the air. Claiborne folded his hands. That is the footage the public has seen. Yes, Maya said. That is what they were allowed to see. She turned toward Daniel Harper. Mr. Harper, would you please stand? Daniel looked startled, but he rose. He held his cap against his chest. Several cameras turned toward him. Maya addressed the room. This is Daniel Harper. He taught history and civics for 39 years. This morning, he was walking his dog at Liberty Pines when he saw Officer Harlan detain me. He recorded what happened before the edited clip begins. Whitcomb looked to Daniel. Mr. Harper, did you alter the recording in any way? No, sir, Daniel said. His voice shook at first, then steadied. I gave the phone to state evidence personnel. They copied it while I watched. I wouldn't know how to change a video even if I had a mind to. A few people in the room gave a quiet breath of recognition. Daniel sounded like someone's father, someone's teacher, someone from a town where a man's word still mattered because it had been tested across decades. Whitcomb nodded. The full recording may be entered for review. Evelyn tapped the tablet. The screen changed. This time, the video began earlier. The chamber saw the memorial bench first. The grass, the flowers in Maya's hand. Officer Harlan entering the frame with hard steps, and a voice already sharpened by suspicion. They heard him question why she was there, what was in the bag, where her car was. They heard Maya offer to show permission. They heard Harlan stop her before she could reach for identification. Then came the description. Young black female, dark jacket, carrying a bag. Maya did not watch the screen. She watched the room. Some faces remained guarded. Others changed quickly. A woman in the second row pressed her fingers to her lips. A retired minister near the back bowed his head. One reporter stopped typing and simply looked up. The video continued. Harlan ordered Maya down. He used the controlled hold that forced her to lower herself beside the bench. The bouquet fell. He told Daniel to stop recording. Daniel refused. Harlan noticed the watch, demanded to know what it was, pulled it from Maya's wrist, and destroyed it under his boot. When Harlan's voice came through the speakers saying, "Now nobody's coming for you," the chamber seemed to lose all movement. Even Senator Claiborne looked away from the screen. The video ended with the trees beginning to move in the distance. No one spoke. Maya let the silence stay. She did not rush to fill it. The stillness belonged to the people in the room now. They had to sit inside what they had just seen. Finally, Chairman Whitcomb removed his glasses and placed them on the desk in front of him. "Representative Williams," he said, and his voice was different now. "You may proceed." Maya stepped closer to the microphone. Her hands remained behind her. The cuffs were not tight enough to injure, but the pressure marks on her wrists were visible when she shifted. She did not hide them. "This morning," she said, "Officer Harlan did not know my title. He did not know my office. He did not know that a state security team was close enough to receive the last signal from a device he tried to destroy. What he knew was simpler. He saw a young black woman in a park he believed she did not belong in. No one interrupted. He did not ask who I was before deciding what I was. He did not examine my permission before treating my presence as suspicious. He did not preserve the truth. He tried to control it." Maya turned her head toward Claiborne, not with anger, but with directness. "Senator, you said we should wait for the facts. I agree. But facts are not neutral when powerful people are allowed to cut them into pieces before the public sees them." Claiborne lowered his eyes. Maya looked back to the full chamber. "What happened to me matters. But it is not the reason I am standing here. I am standing here because a code appeared in Officer Harlan's cruiser, P-17. I am standing here because a message arrived, telling him to clear that report before noon. I am standing here because Captain Monroe's team has just interrupted an attempt to erase Red Hollow's records." A wave of whispers moved through the chamber. Maya did not raise her voice. "Somewhere in those records are people who complained and were dismissed. People who were stopped and told it was routine. People who were made to feel like strangers in their own state. If we allow those records to disappear, we do not just lose data, we lose citizens." At the side table, Evelyn's eyes were wet, but her posture remained firm. Rachel stood behind Maya with both hands folded, watching every face. Chairman Whitcomb leaned toward his microphone. "Attorney General Reed has arrived." The doors at the rear opened, and Marcus Reed entered carrying a sealed folder and a tablet from his office. He walked down the aisle with the grave expression of a man bringing more than evidence. He was bringing consequence. Maya stepped back from the microphone just enough to let him approach. The chamber had begun the morning divided over a bill. Now it waited to learn whether an entire police department had tried to bury the truth before breakfast. Marcus Reed reached the front table without greeting the room. He was dressed in a dark gray suit, his tie slightly uneven, the only sign that the morning had pulled him out of order. His hair was neatly trimmed, his face composed, but his eyes carried the hard focus of a prosecutor who had stopped thinking in politics and started thinking in charges. He placed the sealed folder on the table beside Evelyn Price, then looked at Chairman Whitcomb. "Mr. Chairman, with your permission, my office will enter a preliminary emergency report into the record." Whitcomb nodded. "Proceed, General Reed." Reed turned to the chamber. At approximately 6:35 this morning, State Executive Security personnel discovered an internal Red Hollow Police Department code, P-17, on Officer Blake Harlan's cruiser terminal. A message connected to that code instructed the officer to clear the report before noon at the direction of Chief Warren Pike. A murmur rose, but Reed continued over it. At 7:14 a.m., State Police Major Crimes, acting under an emergency preservation directive from my office, entered Red Hollow Police Department headquarters after access was denied. At that time, Chief Pike was found inside the department's server room, where an emergency deletion protocol had been activated. The chamber went still again. Senator Claiborne leaned toward his microphone. His voice was quieter now. "General Reed, are you saying Chief Pike was personally attempting to destroy records?" I am saying he was found at the active console during an unauthorized purge of department archives relevant to this investigation. That is not the same thing. Reed looked at him. No, Senator. That is the careful version. Several people in the back of the room shifted. No one laughed. The sentence was too grave for that. Reed opened the folder and removed a printed sheet. The purge was interrupted when state police technicians cut power to the building before the process completed. Digital forensics has begun imaging the drives. The material is preliminary, but enough has already been recovered to establish the existence of a local initiative called Parkline Sweep. Maya stood beside the witness table, still cuffed, still silent. She watched the room absorb the name. Parkline Sweep sounded harmless, administrative, almost boring. That was the danger of it. A clean name could hide a dirty practice. Reed nodded to Evelyn. The screen at the front of the chamber changed. A map appeared. It showed Liberty Pines State Park, the Marina Road, the lakefront neighborhoods, the country club access road, and a line of private lanes near Red Hollow's wealthiest homes. Red dots marked repeated stops, checks, and detentions. Reed spoke evenly. These points represent documented police contacts labeled under P17, or related internal notes during the last 18 months. A second image appeared, a spreadsheet. Names were partially redacted, but the columns remained visible. Date, time, location, vehicle, race, reason for contact, disposition. Officer comments. The word Hispanic appeared again and again. Black appeared again and again. In the notes column, phrases repeated with small variations. Wrong side traffic, possible loitering, park drift, marina watch, verify presence. Maya saw Daniel Harper lower his head. He understood what the room was looking at before some of the politicians did, Reed said. The recovered material suggests that Red Hollow officers were using P17 to document stops and surveillance contacts, involving people of color in and around public parkland, lake access points, and affluent residential corridors. Claiborne's voice came again, but it had lost its earlier force. General Reed, is it possible this was simply a public safety pattern? A targeted response to complaints? Reed turned a page. Public safety does not require officers to record race in informal watch lists while omitting legal basis for detention. Public safety does not require reports to be edited after complaints are filed. Public safety does not require a police chief to initiate deletion procedures when state investigators arrive. No one answered. Maya looked across the chamber. Some legislators were reading the screen with the stunned expression of people seeing a familiar institution become unfamiliar. Others were trying not to react at all. Their stillness was political. Their silence was calculation. Chairman Whitcomb leaned forward. General Reed, are there named complainants? Yes. Some are still being verified. One is present today. Maya turned slightly. From a side entrance, Leah Turner entered the chamber. She wore navy scrubs beneath a long tan coat, as if she had come straight from work or was about to return to it. Her hair was pulled back. Her face showed the exhaustion of someone who had worked nights and fought not to be dismissed in the daylight. She was 31, a nurse at Street Bartholomew Medical Center, and she carried herself with the guarded dignity of a woman who had told the truth once and had not been believed. Evelyn guided her to the witness table. Maya met Leah's eyes. There was no need for introduction between them. Recognition passed quietly. Not personal recognition, but the recognition of shared treatment. Whitcomb spoke gently. Miss Turner, are you willing to make a brief statement? Leah sat, adjusted the microphone, and looked once toward Maya's cuffs before speaking. My name is Leah Turner. I'm a registered nurse. 3 months ago, after a 12-hour night shift, I drove through Red Hollow because there was construction on County Line Road. I stopped near the marina pullout to answer a call from my mother. Officer Harlan approached my car and said I matched a suspicious activity pattern. Her hands folded tightly on the table. I asked what I had done. He said people had been checking parked boats. I was in scrubs. My hospital badge was around my neck. He told me to step out. He put me in a control hold and made me kneel beside my car while he checked my license. The room was silent. He did not injure me. Leah continued. But that does not mean nothing happened. People drove by. They looked. One woman slowed down and then kept going. I remember thinking I had spent all night keeping people alive, and by sunrise I was on my knees trying to prove I wasn't a thief. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Leah's voice held steady. I filed a complaint. Red Hollow said there was no supporting evidence. They said the officer made a reasonable public safety contact. The complaint disappeared. Today, General Reed's office showed me a recovered entry. My stop was listed under P17. Evelyn pressed her lips together. Reed asked, Miss Turner, did anyone from Red Hollow follow up with you after your complaint? No. But 2 weeks later, I got pulled over again outside town. No ticket. Just a warning to drive the main road next time. A low sound moved through the audience. Not outrage yet. Recognition. Maya stepped closer to the microphone. Miss Turner, may I ask you something? Leah nodded. When you saw the edited video this morning, what did you think? Leah looked at Maya's muddy knees and then at her face. I thought they were doing to you what they did to me, taking the part where a woman tries to defend herself and using it to hide the part where they put her down first. Maya held her gaze. Thank you. Leah leaned back, but her eyes stayed forward. She had not cried. She had not pleaded. That made her testimony harder to dismiss. Reed returned to the center. The state will be contacting other individuals whose names appear in the recovered materials. We expect more complainants to come forward. Senator Claiborne looked down at the papers he had brought with him. The statement he had prepared in defense of procedure now sat useless in his hand. He folded it once and placed it beneath a folder. Maya saw the movement. For months, Claiborne had argued that her bill assumed the worst of local departments. Now the worst had walked into the room wearing official language and spreadsheet columns. Chairman Whitcomb spoke slowly. General Reed, what is the current status of Officer Harlan and Chief Pike? Officer Harlan is in state custody pending formal processing. Chief Pike has also been secured and is being transported. My office is preparing state charges related to official misconduct, obstruction, and destruction, or attempted destruction of public records. Civil rights referrals are being prepared for federal review. The words changed the temperature in the room. Outside the chamber doors, reporters began moving. Staffers checked phones. The news was spreading through the building faster than any formal announcement could contain. Rachel stepped closer to Maya. They're bringing them through the East Hall. Maya turned her head slightly. Now? Yes. Evelyn heard and crossed to them. We can keep you inside. You don't need to be in that hallway. Maya looked toward Leah Turner, then Daniel Harper, then the screen still showing the red dots across Red Hollow. No, she said. I want them to walk past the people they thought would never be believed. Evelyn studied her face. Maya, be careful. That hallway will be full of cameras. Maya's voice stayed calm. Good. Chairman Whitcomb called a brief recess to allow the Attorney General's documents to be formally entered into the record. The room did not relax. No one reached casually for coffee. No one returned to small talk. People stood slowly, as if their bodies had not yet caught up to what their minds had heard. Maya stepped away from the microphone, still cuffed. Daniel Harper approached her from the aisle. Representative Williams? Yes, Mr. Harper. He looked at the screen, then at Leah. I taught my students that records matter because memory can be bullied. I never thought I'd see that lesson sitting on a government screen. Maya answered quietly. Today, the record talks back. At the rear of the chamber, the doors opened into the marble hall. The sound of reporters gathering outside grew louder, though the chamber itself remained subdued. Rachel moved to Maya's side. They're here, she said. Maya straightened her shoulders and walked toward the hallway. The marble hallway outside the hearing chamber was already crowded when Maya stepped through the doors. Reporters lined both sides behind a temporary rope barrier. Cameras rested on shoulders. Phones were raised above heads. Legislative aides stood pressed against the walls, whispering into headsets. A few older citizens from the hearing had followed at a careful distance, not wanting to miss what everyone seemed to understand would become the image of the day. Maya did not speak. Rachel Boone walked at her left shoulder. Evelyn Price followed close behind, her face composed, though her eyes moved constantly across the hall, reading risks, faces, angles, microphones. Marcus Reed came out behind them with 2 members of his legal staff, the sealed folder still tucked under one arm. At the far end of the East Hall, 2 sets of doors opened. Officer Blake Harlan entered first. He was no longer wearing the confidence he had worn in the park. His red hollow jacket was wrinkled. His nameplate had been removed. His hands were cuffed in front of him, and 2 state officers escorted him with firm, quiet control. No one shoved him. No one dragged him. That restraint made the sight more powerful. He was being handled by the same rules he had claimed to protect. Behind him came Chief Warren Pike. Pike looked older than he had in the server room, footage Reed had shown the legal team. His shirt collar sat crooked. His face was pale. His eyes moved across the cameras, then to the floor. He seemed less afraid of the cuffs than of being seen in them. For a moment, the hallway made no sound. Even the reporters held their questions. The silence was not respectful. It was stunned. It was the silence of people recognizing that a story had just reversed in public. Harlan saw Maya first. His steps slowed. The officers beside him stopped when Rachel lifted one hand. Pike stopped behind him. The distance between them and Maya was no more than 10 feet. 3 hours earlier, Harlan had stood over her in the grass and told her nobody was coming. Now he stood in the marble hall of the State House, cuffed, without his badge, facing the woman he had tried to reduce to a report. Maya's hands were still behind her. The pressure marks at her wrists remained visible when the sleeves of her father's jacket shifted. Mud had dried at her knees. She looked directly at Harlan, but her face carried no triumph. That seemed to disturb him more than anger would have. "Representative Williams," Harlan began. Rachel's voice cut in. "Do not address her." Maya raised her chin slightly. "Let him speak." Rachel looked at her once, then stepped back half a pace. Harlan swallowed. Cameras leaned closer. Microphones rose. "I didn't know who you were," he said. The sentence was small. Too small for the hallway. Too small for the morning. Too small for the crushed flowers. The broken watch. The false report. The code on his terminal. And the people whose names were now being pulled from Red Hollow's servers. Maya let the words hang there. Then she answered, quietly enough that the reporters had to strain, but clearly enough that every microphone caught it. "That is the problem, Officer Harlan. You should not have needed to." Harlan's mouth tightened. He looked as if he wanted to say more, but nothing useful came. He lowered his eyes. Pike shifted behind him. Maya turned her gaze to the chief. For the first time, Pike looked directly at her. His eyes held calculation first, then resentment, then something closer to fear. He was a man who had spent years behind desks, policies, codes, and administrative language. He had not expected the people inside his spreadsheets to stand in front of him. "Chief Pike," Maya said. He did not answer. "You named it Parkline Sweep," she continued. "You made it sound like maintenance, like clearing leaves from a public path." Pike's jaw moved once. "You don't understand what it takes to keep a town safe." Leah Turner had stepped into the hallway behind Maya. She heard him and moved forward before anyone stopped her. "I was in scrubs," Leah said. "I had a hospital badge on. I was tired, and I called my mother from a parking pullout. Was I what your town needed protection from?" Pike looked away. Daniel Harper stood behind Leah, his cap in both hands. "And the young Hispanic man near the boat path?" he asked. "Was he a threat too? Or just another person you thought no one would miss in the records?" Pike's face hardened. "This is not a trial." Marcus Reed stepped forward. "No, Chief. It is a hallway. The trial comes later." A low ripple moved through the crowd, but no one laughed. Reed's words had the weight of a locked door closing. The state officers began moving Harlan and Pike forward again. The reporters recovered all at once. "Officer Harlan, did you destroy the representative's security device?" "Chief Pike, why was the server purge activated? Did Red Hollow use race in patrol targeting?" "Representative Williams, do you accept Harlan's explanation?" Maya did not answer the questions. She watched Harlan and Pike pass. Harlan kept his eyes down. Pike tried to look straight ahead, but the cameras forced him to turn slightly. For one brief second, he saw the large monitor mounted in the hall. It was replaying the hearing feed. On the screen, Maya stood at the microphone with her hands still cuffed behind her while the map of Parkline Sweep glowed beside her. Pike stopped looking. When the doors at the far end closed behind the two men, the hallway did not immediately erupt. People seemed to need time to understand what they had just witnessed. The badge without authority, the chief without control, the woman they had doubted still standing. Evelyn stepped close to Maya. That image will be everywhere within 5 minutes. Maya looked toward the closed doors. Good, Maya. Once it's everywhere, they'll pick it apart. They'll say it was staged. They'll say Reed arranged the timing. They'll say you wanted a public confrontation. They can say what they want, Maya said. They all saw him say he didn't know who I was. Evelyn's face softened, but only slightly. And you answered him perfectly. Maya looked down the hall where Harlan and Pike had disappeared. I wish it didn't need answering. Rachel moved closer. We should get you back inside before this hallway turns into a press conference. Maya nodded. As they returned to the hearing chamber, Leah walked beside her. When he said that, Leah said, about not knowing who you were, I thought about my complaint. I kept trying to make them understand I was a nurse. Like that should have saved me. Maya turned to her. It should not have depended on that. No, Leah said. But it did. They entered the chamber again. The room was different now. Not louder, not calmer. Different. The people inside had heard enough to know the morning had moved beyond rumor. Senator Claiborne sat still at the dais, both hands folded over his useless prepared statement. Chairman Whitcomb watched Maya return with the expression of a man trying to measure the distance between procedure and conscience. Maya resumed her place at the microphone. She waited until the last whisper died. I want the record to show what just happened in the East Hall, she said. Officer Harlan told me he did not know who I was. That statement is not a defense. It is an admission. No one interrupted. If I had been a nurse leaving a night shift, if I had been a retired teacher walking home, if I had been a young man coming from work near the marina, if I had been anyone without a title, without security, without a helicopter arriving over the trees, then this morning would have ended with his report and my silence. Leah lowered her eyes. Daniel sat straighter. Maya continued. That is why we are here. Not because one officer embarrassed one elected official. We are here because the system taught him that some people can be handled first and understood later. We are here because Chief Pike tried to erase the proof before the public could see it. We are here because an edited video almost became the truth, before the truth arrived whole. She turned slightly toward Chairman Whitcomb. Mr. Chairman, I am ready to proceed with the accountability bill. Claiborne leaned toward his microphone. His voice was quieter than before. Representative Williams. Maya looked at him. He took off his glasses and set them down. Before we proceed, I would like the record to reflect that my earlier request to suspend the hearing was based on incomplete information. Evelyn glanced at Maya. Claiborne continued, each word measured. I will review the full record before making any final statement on the bill, but I will not repeat the union's characterization of your conduct. It was not an apology. Not yet. But for a man like Claiborne, in a room like that, it was a retreat from falsehood. Maya nodded once. Thank you, Senator. Chairman Whitcomb looked to Reed. General Reed, will your office continue providing verified materials as they are recovered? Yes, Mr. Chairman. Then this hearing will continue. The gavel remained untouched. There was no dramatic strike, no formal thunder, only an old chairman leaning into a microphone and choosing not to look away. Maya stood before them, still cuffed, still wearing the mud from Liberty Pines, and understood that the morning had entered its final turn. Now the state would have to decide whether seeing the truth was enough to change it. The accountability bill had been on the calendar for weeks, but until that morning, most people in the State House had treated it like another political fight. Now every page on the committee table felt heavier. Evelyn Price placed the bill summary in front of Maya, though Maya could not pick it up with her hands still secured behind her. Evelyn noticed and angled the paper so Maya could read it without touching it. The gesture was small, almost private, but several cameras caught it. That was how the room had changed. Even small accommodations now carried meaning. Chairman Whitcomb adjusted his microphone. Representative Williams, You may present the revised purpose of the Public Dignity and Police Accountability Act. Maya looked at the title page. Public Dignity. Months ago, some of her colleagues had advised her to choose a less emotional name. They preferred language like procedural review, municipal compliance, public safety modernization, words that sounded safe enough to pass without making anyone uncomfortable. Maya had refused then. She was more certain now. "Mr. Chairman," she began, "this bill was written before what happened to me this morning. It was written because of complaints that were ignored, stops that were never explained, reports that were edited after the fact, and citizens who were told there was no proof." She turned slightly, allowing the room to see the cuffs again. She did not exaggerate the movement. She did not need to. This morning gave that problem a face, but it did not create the problem. Senator Claiborne listened without looking at his papers. That alone told Evelyn the ground had shifted. Claiborne loved paper. He trusted prepared language, because prepared language rarely surprised him. Now he sat with empty hands. Maya continued, "The bill has 3 core principles. First, police data involving stops, detentions, complaints, and body camera records cannot be controlled only by the department being accused of misconduct. Second, civilians must have a meaningful way to review patterns of abuse before those patterns become scandals. Third, any officer or supervisor who knowingly falsifies reports or destroys public records must face personal accountability." She paused. Not political accountability. Not public relations accountability. Real accountability. A committee member from the rural Western District leaned into his microphone. Representative Tom Wexler was in his late 50s, a former volunteer firefighter with a square face and a voice that usually carried across rooms without help. He had been undecided for months. "Representative Williams," he said, "I come from a county where the sheriff's office has 12 people on a good week. They're going to hear this and think the state is coming for them." Maya faced him. "Then tell them the state is coming for their records only if their records show people are being targeted and then erased." Wexler frowned, but not with hostility. "Small departments don't have big legal teams. Neither do the people they stop." The answer landed cleanly. Wexler leaned back. He did not argue again. Another member, Representative Diane Mallory, asked, "How do we prevent false complaints from destroying good officers?" Maya nodded. "By preserving full evidence. That protects everyone." Officer Harlan's edited clip almost destroyed the truth this morning. Full records corrected it. If an officer acts properly, independent records protect that officer. If an officer abuses authority, independent records protect the citizen. The only people harmed by transparency are the people depending on darkness. Daniel Harper, seated in the second row, lowered his head and wrote the sentence in a small notebook. Old habits from decades of teaching had not left him. Marcus Reed stepped forward when Whitcomb recognized him. "My office can support the bill's evidence provisions with technical amendments. After what we saw in Red Hollow, local-only control of misconduct evidence is no longer defensible." Claiborne finally spoke. "General Reed, we should be careful not to legislate from one morning." Reed looked at him. "Senator, with respect, one morning gave us probable cause. The last 18 months gave us the pattern." Claiborne accepted that with a slow nod. Maya watched him closely. She did not need him to become a hero. She needed him to stop being useful to the lie. At the back of the room, a clerk rushed in and handed a note to Evelyn. Evelyn read it, then moved to Maya's side. "The union is trying to walk back Donovan's statement," she whispered. "They're saying he spoke before all facts were known." Maya kept her eyes forward. "That sounds familiar." They're also claiming the edited clip came from an anonymous source, not Red Hollow. "Of course, Donovan is asking to issue a corrected statement." Maya turned toward her. "No." Evelyn lifted an eyebrow. "He can issue whatever statement he wants," Maya said quietly. "But not from this room. Not before Leah speaks again." Evelyn looked toward Leah Turner, who sat near Daniel with her hands folded in her lap. Leah had not asked for any of this. She had come as a nurse who had once been made to kneel beside her car after a night shift. Now she was watching lawmakers debate whether people like her deserved a record that could not be buried. Evelyn understood. "I'll tell them to wait." Whitcomb addressed the chamber. Miss Turner, are you willing to answer further questions related to complaint procedures? Leah stood. Yes, sir. She returned to the witness table. Her voice was steadier now, but her face still carried the strain of being seen by too many strangers. Representative Mallory asked her gently, when you filed your complaint, what did you expect to happen? Leah gave a small, tired smile. I expected someone to ask me questions, like they believed I might be telling the truth. No one moved. What happened instead? Mallory asked. They sent me a letter. It said the officer's conduct was within policy. It said the video did not support my claim. Did you see the video? No. Did anyone explain the policy? No. Did anyone ask whether there were witnesses? No. Leah looked toward Maya, then back at the committee. That's the part people don't understand. It's not only what happens when they stop you, it's what happens after, when the paper tells you your memory doesn't count. An older man in the audience wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. He tried to hide it. His wife noticed and took his other hand. Maya felt the room listening differently now. Not perfectly, not unanimously, but differently. Whitcomb leaned toward the microphone. Representative Williams, would your bill require departments to provide complainants access to the evidence used to dismiss their claims? Yes, Maya said, with privacy protections where necessary. But no citizen should receive a conclusion without a path to review the facts behind it. Claiborne asked, and if the complaint is unfounded, then the evidence will show that. But the findings should not come from the same closed room where the complaint disappeared. Reed added, the state can establish a neutral evidence portal, chain of custody, audit logs, restricted access, retention rules. This is not radical. It is basic integrity. For the first time all morning, a few legislators on both sides nodded at the same time. Maya noticed it. So did Evelyn. Outside the chamber, the hallway remained loud with reporters. Inside, the argument had become quieter and more serious. That was how real change often entered a room, Maya thought. Not as thunder, as a shift in what people were no longer willing to defend out loud. Whitcomb looked across the dais. We will move to preliminary consideration of the bill after a short recess. Maya turned her head toward Rachel. Not yet. Rachel stepped closer. What do you need? Maya looked down at her restrained hands. It's time. Rachel understood immediately. The room sensed the movement before anyone announced it. Cameras lifted. Reporters leaned forward. Evelyn stepped aside. Rachel came behind Maya, holding the key taken from Harlan's custody envelope. Whitcomb began. Representative Williams, do you wish to pause the proceedings? No, Mr. Chairman, Maya said. I want this included in them. Rachel worked carefully. She opened the cuffs without haste, using both hands, keeping the action plain and respectful. When the metal restraints came free, she did not hold them up. She placed them on the witness table in front of Maya. Maya brought her hands forward slowly. The pressure marks circled her wrists, clear and even. They were not wounds. They were not dramatic. That made them harder to dismiss. They showed control, time, humiliation. A public official treated first as a suspect and understood only later. Maya held her wrists where the cameras could see. This is not injury, she said. This is evidence. The chamber remained completely quiet. She lowered her hands and touched the dried mud on one knee. And this is not theater. This is what it looks like when a person is made to prove she belongs in a public place. She looked at Leah, then Daniel, then Claiborne, then the chairman. They forced me to kneel because they believed a young black woman had no power in that park. But power was never the badge. Power is the truth that refuses to stay buried. No one stood at first. The room seemed unable to move. Then Daniel Harper rose slowly, his cap pressed against his chest. Leah Turner stood beside him. After that, an older woman in the back row stood. Then Representative Mallory. Then Tom Wexler. One by one, people rose throughout the chamber, not cheering, not celebrating, but standing as if something in them had been called to account. Senator Claiborne remained seated for 3 seconds longer than the rest. Then he stood too. Chairman Whitcomb did not call for applause. He did not need to. What filled the chamber was not applause in the usual political sense. It was slower, heavier, and more personal. People stood with their hands at their sides, or folded in front of them, or pressed against the backs of chairs. Some clapped only once or twice and then stopped, as if sound could cheapen what they had just seen. Maya lowered her wrists. The cuffs rested on the witness table in front of her. They looked smaller there than they had felt in the park. Without Harlan's hand, without his voice, without the authority he had wrapped around them, they were only metal. But everyone in the room understood what they had represented that morning. Rachel Boone stepped back, but she did not leave Maya's side. Evelyn Price stood near the evidence table, one hand pressed against the folder of Bill's summaries she had spent months preparing. Marcus Reed watched the room with a prosecutor's stillness, reading faces the way he read juries. Chairman Whitcomb waited until every person was seated again. "Representative Williams," he said, "this committee will continue consideration of the bill. Before we proceed to member statements, I want to make one thing clear for the record. The images and testimony presented today have raised serious questions about local law enforcement practices in Red Hollow. This committee will not ignore those questions." His voice was formal, but it had lost its earlier distance. Maya nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." Senator Claiborne remained standing for a moment after the others sat. He looked down at his papers, then at Maya, then at the cuffs on the table. "Mr. Chairman," he said, "may I speak?" Whitcomb hesitated. Briefly, Claiborne adjusted his glasses. He seemed older than he had that morning, not weaker, but stripped of the certainty that had carried him into the room. "Representative Williams and I have disagreed on this bill from the beginning. I believed it reached too far into local policing. I believed it risked punishing good departments for the failures of a few bad ones." Maya watched him without expression. Claiborne continued, "I still believe we must protect due process for officers. I still believe small departments need resources, not only punishment. But what we saw today cannot be explained away as a misunderstanding. And the attempt to erase records at Red Hollow makes it impossible for me to oppose independent preservation of evidence." A few reporters began typing again. He turned slightly toward Maya. "I owe this committee a more careful position than the one I walked in with. It was not the full apology some wanted, but in a room built on guarded language, it was a door opening." Maya said, "Careful is enough, Senator, if it leads to honest." Claiborne accepted the words with a small nod and sat down. Representative Tom Wexler leaned forward next. "I want the rural departments in my district protected from unfunded mandates. But I'll say this plainly. If a department keeps honest records, this bill should not scare them." Maya looked toward him. "That is all I've ever argued." Wexler nodded. "Then I want to work on the funding language." Evelyn's pen was already moving across her legal pad. She leaned toward one of Maya's aides and whispered, "Get his staff in the room after recess. Do not let that offer cool." Across the chamber, Leah Turner sat with both hands folded in her lap. Her face showed no victory. She looked drained. Daniel Harper noticed and leaned toward her. "You all right, Miss Turner?" Leah looked at him. "I don't know yet." "That's fair." She gave him a faint smile. "You always this honest? Retirement leaves a man with fewer reasons to pretend." Leah looked toward Maya. "I thought telling it would make me feel better." Daniel shook his head. "Sometimes telling it just makes room for better to arrive later." At the front, Marcus Reed returned to the microphone. "Mr. Chairman, while this committee continues its work, my office will formally request temporary state oversight of Red Hollow Police Department's digital records, pending a full investigation. We will also open a public intake line for citizens who believe they were stopped or detained under P-17 or Parkline sweep." Whitcomb said, "How soon?" "Today." The word moved through the room. Today. Not after the next election. Not after a study commission. Today. Maya looked at Leah. Leah heard it too. Evelyn received another message and stepped close to Maya. "Your mother is outside the chamber." Maya turned quickly. "Here?" She got through security with half the pastors in Southgate behind her. I'm not sure anyone wanted to be the person who told her no. For the first time all day, Maya's face changed completely. Not into a smile. Not quite. Into the face of a daughter. Whitcomb noticed. "Representative Williams, we will take a 10-minute recess before member statements." Maya nodded. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The recess began, but the room did not empty the way hearing rooms usually did. People stood slowly, speaking in low voices. Some legislators crossed the aisle to speak with colleagues they had avoided all morning. Reporters hurried into the hallway. Staffers carried copies of the bill like they had suddenly become urgent documents. Rachel picked up the cuffs from the witness table and placed them in an evidence bag. Maya watched her. Rachel said, "Chain of custody." "I know. You still want them entered?" "Yes." Rachel sealed the bag. "They will be." Evelyn guided Maya toward the side door. "Your mother is in the private hall. I kept cameras out." "You managed to keep cameras away from my mother?" "I value my life." Maya almost laughed, but the sound caught in her throat. In the private corridor behind the chamber, Denise Williams stood with her purse clutched under one arm and her church coat buttoned wrong at the top. She was not tall, but she carried herself like a woman who had raised a child alone after burying a husband and had not asked the world for permission to survive. When she saw Maya, her eyes went first to her daughter's face, then to her wrists, then to the mud on her jeans. "Maya, Denise." "Mama." Denise crossed the space between them and took Maya's hands carefully. She turned them palm up, then palm down, studying the pressure marks. Her lips pressed together. "He put those on my child at Caleb's bench?" Maya's voice softened. "Yes, ma'am." Denise closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the anger was still there, but behind it was grief. "Your father used to polish that plaque every Memorial Day. Said a name should never be left dirty if somebody died serving other people." "I know, and that man made you kneel in front of it." Maya could answer senators, reporters, union spokesmen, and police chiefs, but her mother's pain went straight past every defense. "I didn't want you to see it like this," Maya said. Denise squeezed her hands. "Baby, I have been black in America longer than you have been alive. I have seen plenty. What I needed to see was whether you stood back up." Maya swallowed. Denise reached up and straightened the collar of Caleb's old jacket. "And you did." Evelyn looked away, giving them privacy without leaving. Denise lowered her voice. "Now listen to me. You do what needs doing in that room. But when the cameras turn off, you are still my daughter. You will eat something. You will sit down. And you will let someone take care of you for 5 minutes without making it a constitutional issue." Maya breathed out a small laugh. "Yes, ma'am." Rachel, standing nearby, said, "Mrs. Williams, I can personally guarantee the eating and sitting down part after the vote." Denise looked Rachel over. "You the one who came in the helicopter?" "Yes, ma'am." Denise nodded once. "Then, thank you for coming for my baby." Rachel's disciplined face softened. "It was my duty." "No," Denise said. "Duty is what people call it when they don't want to admit they cared." Rachel had no answer for that. A staffer appeared at the hall entrance. "Representative Williams, they're reconvening." Maya looked at her mother. Denise released her hands. "Go on." Maya turned toward the chamber door, then stopped. "Mama?" "Yes." Dad would have hated all this attention. Denise glanced at the old jacket, then toward the hearing room beyond. "Your father hated bullies more." Maya nodded and went back inside. When she returned to the chamber, people watched her differently. Some with respect, some with discomfort, some with the guarded faces of those still calculating consequences. That was all right. Maya had not come to be loved by the room. She had come to make the room responsible. Chairman Whitcomb brought the hearing back to order. "We will now proceed to member statements and preliminary action on the bill." Maya took her seat at the witness table for the first time that morning without cuffs. Her wrists still carried the marks. Her knees still carried the mud. But her hands were free now, resting flat on the table beside the bill she had brought to the State House long before the park gave it a living witness. Outside, the news trucks kept broadcasting. Inside, the work began. Representative Tom Wexler was the first to ask for the floor after the recess. He did not look like a man eager to join a movement. He looked like a man who had spent the recess making calls to sheriffs, county commissioners, and old friends who still believed the best thing a legislature could do was leave small towns alone. He held a yellow legal pad covered in notes. His jaw was set, but his voice was steady. "Mr. Chairman," he said, I want the record to reflect that I still have concerns about cost. My district has departments running on old computers, shared dispatch, and officers who buy their own winter gloves. If we pass this bill without funding, we will set up small towns to fail. Maya leaned toward her microphone. Representative Wexler. I agree. That caught him off guard. She continued. A department should not be punished for being poor. It should be held accountable for being dishonest. Those are not the same thing. Wexler nodded slowly. Then I'd like an amendment, creating a state grant pool for evidence storage, data transfer, and training. Evelyn Price, seated behind Maya, wrote fast. Maya could hear the pen moving across the page. Maya said, I would support that amendment. Wexler looked at her wrists, then back at her face. And I would support moving the bill forward if that language is included. The room shifted again, but this time the shift carried something close to momentum. Senator Claiborne spoke next. I also want language protecting due process for officers accused of misconduct. Independent review cannot become public punishment before facts are established. Maya did not resist the point. Agreed. The goal is not to replace one unfair system with another. The goal is to make sure no one controls the evidence against themselves. Claiborne studied her for a long second. That sentence should be in the bill. It can be. For months, every negotiation over the bill had felt like pulling a heavy wagon uphill while people stood in front of it calling themselves neutral. Now, the same people were stepping aside, some reluctantly, some with embarrassment, some because the cameras had made retreat impossible. Maya accepted all of it. Justice did not always arrive carried by pure hearts. Sometimes it came because the truth left people nowhere else to stand. Representative Diane Mallory asked for recognition. General Reed, can the state evidence portal be built without exposing private information from victims, witnesses, or minors? Marcus Reed answered carefully. Yes. Records can be tiered. Public statistical reporting can be separated from protected personal details. Investigators, review boards, and complainants can receive access appropriate to their role. Privacy is not an argument against preservation. Mallory nodded. Then, I'll work with your office on privacy language. Chairman Whitcomb looked down the dais. Any further member questions? For the first time that morning, no one rushed to speak. That silence was different from the silence after the video. It was not shock. It was recognition that the argument had moved from whether something was wrong to how much courage they had to fix it. Maya glanced back toward Leah Turner. Leah sat with Denise Williams now, Maya's mother having taken the seat beside her as if she had known the young nurse all her life. Denise held Leah's hand between both of hers. Leah was listening to the proceedings, but her shoulders had lowered slightly. She no longer looked alone. Daniel Harper sat one row behind them, writing in his notebook. Later, he would tell a reporter that he did not want to forget anything, because forgetting was how people got away with things. At that moment, he simply wrote down the names of everyone who spoke and what they chose to defend. Chairman Whitcomb adjusted the papers in front of him. The committee will consider a motion to advance the Public Dignity and Police Accountability Act for emergency floor consideration, pending amendments on funding, privacy, and due process. The words reached the back of the chamber before some people understood them. Emergency floor consideration. Evelyn leaned close to Maya. That means today. I know. Are you ready for today? Maya looked at the bill on the table, then at the sealed evidence bag containing the cuffs. Today is what they gave us. Senator Claiborne lifted his microphone again. Mr. Chairman, before the motion, I would like to make a statement. Whitcomb nodded. Proceed. Claiborne folded his hands. He did not look at Maya at first. He looked toward the audience, at Leah, at Daniel, at Denise Williams, then finally at the screen where the map of Red Hollow still remained. My father was a county deputy, he said. Many in this room know that. I grew up believing that a badge was a promise. In most cases, I still believe it should be, but a promise without accountability becomes a shield for the wrong people. He stopped, cleared his throat, and continued. This morning I repeated a characterization of Representative Williams's conduct based on a partial video. I should not have done that. I was wrong to rely on an edited account before seeing the whole record. No one moved. Maya looked at him. and for the first time, she saw the cost of the admission in his face. Men like Claiborne did not apologize easily, not because they never felt regret, but because they had spent too many years confusing certainty with strength. Claiborne turned toward her. "Representative Williams, I apologize." Maya did not rush to forgive him for the cameras. She did not punish him either. "Thank you, Senator," she said. "Let the record show that the whole truth changed the room. That is why the whole truth must be preserved for everyone." Claiborne nodded once and sat. Whitcomb called for the motion. Representative Mallory made it. Wexler seconded. The clerk began calling names. Each answer landed with plain force. "Yes, yes, yes. With amendments? Yes." Claiborne's name came near the end. He looked at Maya. "Yes." The motion passed. Not unanimously, but clearly. Strongly enough that no one could call it symbolic. Strongly enough that the bill would move to the full floor before the day ended. The chamber exhaled. Evelyn put a hand over her mouth for one brief second, then lowered it before anyone could mistake her for sentimental. Rachel Boone looked toward the exits, still working security even as history moved around her. Reed sent a message to his office. Daniel stopped writing and simply sat with his cap in his lap. Maya felt the moment pass through her, but she did not let it lift her too high. One vote in committee was not victory. It was a door opening. People could still weaken the bill. Unions could still fight. Departments could still resist. Commentators could still talk over Leah and Daniel and the evidence until the public grew tired. But something had changed. The state had seen the dirt before anyone could sweep it away. Chairman Whitcomb spoke again. "This committee stands in recess pending the filing of amendments. Representative Williams, General Reed, Miss Turner, Mr. Harper, thank you for your testimony and cooperation." The microphones dimmed. The room began to move, slowly at first, then all at once. Reporters surged toward the aisle, but Rachel and state security held a respectful line. Maya turned to Leah. "You didn't have to come today." Leah stood. "Yes, I did." Maya nodded. "You were heard." Leah looked toward the dais. For the first time, Denise Williams stepped close to Maya and brushed a bit of dried grass from her jacket sleeve. "Your father would have said you talked too long." Maya smiled faintly. He would have been right. He also would have been proud. Maya looked down for a moment. The pressure marks on her wrists were beginning to fade at the edges, but not completely. She wondered how long it would take before they disappeared. She wondered how long it took a state to lose the marks left by years of looking away. Evelyn approached with 2 phones in one hand and a stack of messages in the other. The governor's office called. "National press wants a statement. Reed's office needs you for a joint appearance. And your mother has already informed me you are eating lunch, whether democracy survives or not," Denise said. "Democracy can wait 20 minutes. Rachel's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Maya looked toward the evidence bag on the table. "Before any statement, I want the cuffs logged with the bill file." Evelyn blinked. "With the bill file?" "Yes. Not as a prop. As part of the record." Reed, overhearing, nodded. "We can attach a certified evidence photograph and chain of custody note to the committee archive," Maya said. "Good." Outside the chamber, the hallway was loud again. This time, the questions were different. They were no longer asking whether Maya had lied. They were asking how deep Red Hollow's records went, how many citizens had been targeted, and whether other towns had similar codes under cleaner names. That was the sound Maya had been waiting for. Not praise, not sympathy. Questions aimed in the right direction. She turned once more toward the hearing room before leaving. The screen still showed the red dots across Red Hollow. Each dot was a stop, a humiliation, a record almost erased. Each dot was a person whose morning, night shift, walk, errand, or drive home had been interrupted by a system that mistook presence for suspicion. Maya whispered, not to the room, but to the promise she had carried from her father's bench to the State House. "We're not done." Then she walked into the hall, where the next fight was waiting. The hallway outside the hearing chamber had become a different place from the one Maya entered less than an hour earlier. When she first arrived, reporters had shouted questions shaped by the union's edited clip. Now those same reporters pressed forward asking about Parkline sweep, Red Hollow's erased complaints, and how many other departments used unofficial codes. The change did not make the hallway kinder. It made it sharper. The story had grown teeth. Rachel Boone kept Maya moving at a steady pace. No answers until Reed is ready. I know. Evelyn walked on Maya's other side, already dictating instructions to a staffer. Pull every public complaint filed against Red Hollow in the last 3 years. Cross-check names against the recovered P-17 entries as soon as Reed's office clears access, and find out who leaked that edited clip to Donovan. The staffer nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. And get Representative Wexler's office the funding draft before lunch. He gave us an open door. We do not let open doors close. Maya glanced at Evelyn. You sound like you're enjoying this. I enjoy competence, Evelyn said. Do not confuse that with joy. They reached a smaller conference room off the west corridor, where Marcus Reed and 2 assistant attorneys general were setting up for a joint statement. A state seal stood behind the podium. 3 microphones had been placed in front. Through the closed door, Maya could hear reporters gathering. Reed looked up as she entered. The committee vote is moving across every network. Donovan's people are trying to revise their story. What are they saying now? Maya asked. That the clip was preliminary. Evelyn gave a dry look. Preliminary lies are still lies. Reed nodded. They're also claiming the union had no knowledge of Parkline's sweep. Did they? We don't know yet. Maya looked at him. Find out. That is the plan. Rachel stepped closer. Before the press statement, Representative Williams needs water and 5 minutes away from cameras. I'm fine, Maya said. Denise Williams, who had followed them into the room, placed her purse on the table and gave her daughter a look that ended the argument before it began. Sit down, Mama. I have to sit. Maya sat. A staffer handed her a bottle of water. Maya drank half of it before realizing how thirsty she was. Her hands were free now, but she still felt the memory of the cuffs in the way her wrists moved. The pressure marks had lightened at the edges, though the lines remained clear. Denise noticed her looking. They'll fade. Maya capped the bottle. Not for everybody. No, Denise said. That's why you're going back out there. There was no softness in the statement, but there was love beneath it. Denise Williams had never raised Maya to believe comfort was the highest goal. She had raised her to recognize when discomfort had a purpose. Reed came to the table. Maya, the press needs a clear sequence. Park detention. Watch destroyed. P-17 discovered. Red Hollow records secured. Committee vote. We keep it factual. Evelyn added. And human. If this becomes only a data story, people will distance themselves from it. Maya looked toward Leah Turner, who sat quietly near the wall with Daniel Harper beside her. Leah had not been scheduled to attend the press statement, but Maya had asked her to stay nearby in case she felt ready. Leah, Maya said, you do not have to speak again. Leah looked up. I know. Do you want to? Leah took a slow breath. I want people to know I filed a complaint. I want them to know I did the proper thing, and the proper thing still disappeared. Daniel nodded. That's worth saying. Reed's assistant looked toward him for approval. Reed said, if Miss Turner is willing, her statement can be brief and voluntary. Leah stood. She smoothed the front of her scrubs under her coat. Then I'll say it. Rachel opened the conference room door. The noise from the press surged in, then organized itself into attention as the group stepped out. Maya took her place at the podium beside Reed. Leah stood a few feet back. Evelyn remained near the side wall. Denise stood behind the reporters, arms folded, watching every face as if daring any of them to turn her daughter into a slogan. Reed spoke first. This morning, my office initiated an emergency preservation action involving Red Hollow Police Department. The action was based on evidence discovered during the detention of Representative Maya Williams at Liberty Pines State Park. During that detention, an internal code known as P-17 was identified, along with a message directing that the related report be cleared. Pens moved. Cameras held steady. Reed continued. State Police Major Crimes entered Red Hollow headquarters after access was denied. Chief Warren Pike was found in the server room during an active deletion protocol. That protocol was interrupted. Digital evidence is being preserved under state control. A reporter called out, Are charges filed? Formal charging documents are being prepared. I will not compromise the investigation by trying the case from a hallway. Another reporter asked, "Is this a civil rights investigation?" "Yes," Reed said. "At the state level, and materials are being prepared for federal review." He stepped back. Maya moved to the microphone. The hallway quieted. "This morning," she said, "many people saw an edited clip of me. In that clip, I looked angry. I looked difficult. I looked like a young woman refusing to respect an officer's authority. That was the point of the edit." She held up her hands, palms forward, showing the fading pressure marks without dramatizing them. What the edit removed was the order that put me on my knees. It removed the memorial bench where I had gone to honor my father. It removed the officer destroying my safety device. It removed the false report being created while I was still trying to explain why I was there. She lowered her hands. The danger of an edited truth is that it gives decent people permission to stop asking questions. No one interrupted. Maya looked across the cameras. I had a title. I had a security team. I had a witness. And still, for a few minutes in that park, Officer Harlan believed he could define me before anyone else arrived. The people listed under Parkline Sweep did not have those protections. That is why today is not about my pride. It is about their records, their complaints, and their right to be believed. She turned slightly. "Leah Turner has agreed to speak." Leah stepped forward. Her eyes moved across the microphones, then settled on one place near the back where Denise stood. Denise gave her a small nod. "My name is Leah Turner," she began. "I'm a nurse. 3 months ago, I was stopped by Officer Harlan after a night shift. I filed a complaint because I believed what happened was wrong. Red Hollow told me there was no evidence to support it." Her voice trembled, but it did not break. "Today, I learned my stop was not gone. It was in their system under P17. That means the proof existed. It just wasn't meant for me to see." The hallway was silent except for cameras recording. Leah continued, "I don't want revenge. I want the next person who files a complaint to know the record won't vanish just because the department is embarrassed." She stepped back. A reporter near the front asked Maya, "Representative Williams, do you believe Officer Harlan targeted you because of race?" Maya looked directly at him. "He gave me a description, broad enough to include almost any young black woman in that park. He told me people from my neighborhood should stay out of places where they don't belong. You can decide what word fits that." Another reporter asked, "Do you accept his statement that he did not know who you were?" Maya answered, without hesitation, "Yes, I accept that he did not know. I reject the idea that it excuses him." The question that followed came from an older local journalist Maya recognized from years of state budget hearings. "Representative, what would you say to people watching this who respect police and feel this bill is an attack?" Maya paused. She knew that audience mattered, especially older Americans who had grown up seeing police as neighbors, Little League coaches, church volunteers, men and women who came when called. "I would say respect is not the same as silence," she said. "If a badge is honorable, accountability protects it. If a department is honest, preserved records prove it. And if an officer serves with integrity, this bill stands beside them, not against them." The journalist nodded, not as agreement, but as acknowledgement. Reed ended the statement before the hallway could become chaos. "Further updates will come from my office. Verified materials will be released according to investigative procedure." Rachel moved Maya away from the podium. Reporters shouted again, but their questions had changed. How many names were in Parkline Sweep? Would other towns be audited? Who sent the edited video? Would the bill pass the floor? Evelyn leaned toward Maya as they turned down the private corridor. That was clean. Meaning they'll have to work harder to twist it. Denise joined them. "Now lunch." Maya almost protested, then saw her mother's face and stopped. "Yes, ma'am." Rachel's phone buzzed before they reached the side room. She read the message, then looked at Maya. "What is it?" Maya asked. Monroe's team found a second folder. Evelyn frowned. "Another Parkline file?" Rachel shook her head. "No. A statewide contact list. Red Hollow may have been sharing P17 language with officers in other towns." Maya stopped walking. The hallway seemed to narrow around her. Reed, who had just caught up, read the message from Rachel's screen. His face hardened. Maya looked back toward the hearing chamber, then toward the press room, then down at her wrists. "This is bigger than Red Hollow," she said. Reed's answer was quiet. "Yes, it may be." Denise closed her eyes for a moment. Evelyn stopped taking notes. Maya had thought the morning had shown them the root. Now she understood it may have shown them only the first exposed branch. The main chamber was full before Maya reached the front. Lawmakers filled the long rows beneath the old flags. Staff crowded along the side walls. The public gallery had no empty seats. People leaned forward over the railings, their faces lit by phone screens and television lights. The story had outrun the State House. It was in diners, living rooms, church offices, hospital break rooms, police stations, barber shops, and senior centers across the state. Maya walked down the center aisle in her father's brown jacket. The mud on her knees had dried. The pressure marks on her wrists had faded but not disappeared. She carried no folder. Evelyn carried the bill text. Marcus Reed carried the legal amendments. Rachel Boone walked behind Maya, alert and steady. Denise Williams sat in the gallery beside Leah Turner and Daniel Harper, her hands folded over her purse. The speaker recognized Maya from the floor. "Representative Williams, you may proceed." Maya stood at her desk. For the first time that day, there were no cuffs on her wrists. Her hands rested flat against the wood. The chamber waited. "Madam Speaker," she began. "Members of this House, this morning I went to Liberty Pines State Park to place flowers at my father's memorial bench. I did not go there to make a statement. I did not go there to challenge anyone. I went there as a daughter. No one moved. I left that park as evidence." A low breath passed through the room. Maya continued. "But this bill is not about one daughter, one bench, one officer, or one town. It is about what happens when power is allowed to keep its own secrets. It is about what happens when a citizen files a complaint and the proof stays locked in the same room as the people accused. It is about what happens when a code can turn a nurse, a worker, a driver, a neighbor, or a young black woman with flowers in her hand into a suspect." Across the aisle, Senator Claiborne stood near the chamber entrance, listening. He had no vote on the House floor, but his presence mattered. Reporters noticed him. Maya did too. Representative Wexler rose after Maya finished her opening statement. "Madam Speaker, I represent small towns. I respect our officers. I also know this: honest departments should not fear honest records. With the funding amendment included, I support the bill." There were murmurs, then nods from members who had waited to see which way rural support would break. Representative Mallory followed. "The Privacy Amendment protects victims and complainants. The Due Process Amendment protects officers from rumor. But the Evidence Preservation provision protects the truth from everyone. I vote yes." Not every speech supported Maya. A few members warned against moving too quickly. One accused the chamber of legislating under pressure. Another said the investigation should finish first. Maya listened without interrupting. She had learned that letting people speak sometimes revealed more than arguing with them. Then Marcus Reed was recognized to clarify the emergency provisions. He kept it plain. "This bill does not convict anyone. It preserves records. It does not abolish local policing. It prevents local misconduct from being buried by local control. If a department has nothing to hide, this law gives it the cleanest way to prove that." The debate lasted 90 minutes. Maya felt every minute in her shoulders, her wrists, her knees, and behind her eyes. She wanted to sit beside her mother. She wanted to go back to the park and pick up the flowers herself. She wanted to sleep, but every time fatigue came close, she looked up at Leah Turner in the gallery. Leah had stayed, so Maya stayed standing. At last, the speaker called the vote. Names appeared on the board one by one. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstention. The chamber watched the colors gather. For several seconds, the result remained uncertain. Then Wexler's block came in. A group of suburban moderates followed. 2 members who had been expected to vote no changed to yes after Claiborne publicly withdrew his objection. The final count appeared. The Public Dignity and Police Accountability Act passed the House with emergency status. The chamber did not explode. It rose. People stood slowly, as they had in the hearing room, not in celebration alone but in recognition of weight. Denise Williams closed her eyes and whispered something Maya could not hear. Daniel Harper removed his tiger's cap. Leah Turner covered her mouth with one hand, then lowered it and stood straighter. Maya looked at the board. For a moment, she was back at the bench, looking at her father's name while Harlan's voice told her nobody was coming. She wished Caleb Williams could have seen the board. Then she corrected herself. Her father had not raised her to need the dead to witness the work. He had raised her to do it anyway. The speaker's voice returned. The bill will proceed under emergency certification to the Senate. Evelyn leaned close to Maya. This is not over. I know, but today matters. Maya looked toward the gallery. Yes, it does. Outside the chamber, reporters waited again. But the questions were no longer the center of the day. The vote was. The records were. The people whose names were still being recovered were. Reed's office had already confirmed preservation notices to multiple towns. Red Hollow was under state supervision. Harlan and Pike were in custody. Carl Donovan's edited video had become part of the investigation into who tried to mislead the public and why. That evening, Maya finally returned home to Southgate. Denise made chicken, rice, green beans, and cornbread because she said soup at the State House did not count as a meal. Rachel sat at the kitchen table because Denise insisted. Evelyn came by with folders and left with a covered plate. For 1 hour, no one turned on the television. A month later, Maya returned to Liberty Pines. This time, she did not come before sunrise. She came in the late morning, when the park was open and families walked the trails. Daniel Harper was there, wearing his tiger's cap. Leah Turner stood beside him in a wool coat. Rachel Boone waited near the path, trying and failing to look like she was not working. Evelyn Price stood with a paper cup of coffee from Hattie's Bakery. Denise Williams carried the flowers. The bench had been cleaned. The brass plaque bearing Caleb Williams's name had been polished until it caught the light. Beside it, the Parks Department had installed a smaller plaque. No citizen should have to kneel to be believed. Maya read the words twice. Leah stood beside her. Do you ever get used to seeing it? No, Maya said. I hope I never do. Daniel cleared his throat. My students used to ask why memorials matter. I told them a memorial is what a community decides not to forget. Denise handed Maya the bouquet. White roses and lilies, tied with a narrow blue ribbon. Maya placed them on the bench. For a while, no one spoke. Wind moved through the pines. A couple walked past with an older dog. A man in a park maintenance vest paused, removed his cap, and continued down the path without saying anything. Maya touched the brass plate with her father's name. Dad, she said quietly. I stood up, and this time, I didn't stand alone. Denise put a hand on her back. Leah stepped closer. Daniel lowered his cap to his chest. Rachel looked away toward the trees, giving the family the dignity of not being watched too closely. Evelyn wiped one eye and pretended it was the wind. Maya looked down at the grass where she had once been forced to kneel. It had grown back. The mud was gone. The crushed flowers were gone. The broken watch had become evidence in a state case, but the memory remained, not as shame, and not as fear, as a warning, as a record, as a beginning. She turned from the bench and faced the people gathered with her. Some were friends now. Some were witnesses. Some were survivors. All of them stood on the same ground where one officer had believed isolation would protect his lie. Maya looked toward the path leading out of the park. There was still work ahead. More records to uncover. More towns to question. More people to believe. But for that morning, beneath the pines, the truth stood in daylight, and no one there was kneeling. The lesson from Maya Williams's story is simple, but powerful. Injustice often survives in silence, in missing records, in edited truths, and in the fear that no one will believe the person who was harmed. But when one voice refuses to disappear, when one witness refuses to look away, and when a community chooses truth over comfort, even the most hidden abuse of power can be brought into the light. True justice is not about revenge. It is about accountability. It is about making sure no person has to kneel, beg, or prove their humanity just to be treated with dignity. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of this story. Your time, your attention, and your heart mean more than you know. If this story moved you, please let us know what you think about the way it was told. Your feedback helps us make each story stronger, deeper, and more meaningful. And if you have a powerful true story, a family story, or an unforgettable experience about justice, courage, kindness, or standing up against unfairness, please share it with our channel. Your story may become the next one that inspires someone else to speak up, stand tall, and believe that truth still matters. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.